Out of the gates, and we're ready to go. Glad you're with us for OutKick 360, the Tuesday edition. Putting with row with you. Tim Brando of Fox Sports. He'll join us to discuss the NCAA tournament that's coming up in hour 2 today. Plus, Michael McHenry is back for another season of Major League Baseball with us. He'll join us every other week. When Kurt Schilling doesn't join us on Tuesday, the Fort, Michael McHenry will. That's in hour 3. Chad, good afternoon.
Hut and I am pissed off for greatness today.
Oh,
I am fired
nice.
up. I am ready. I will tear into anything. I will rip it limb from limb. I don't care what it is. I could throw this bottle of moonshine right up here off of Davey Hudson's head right now just to get the party started. And it has nothing to do with Davey, by the way, by the reason that I'm pissed off for greatness. I'm just fired up. There are days where you wake up and you got a fire in your belly and you just got to let it breathe. You got to let that dragon breathe. And that's how I feel today. The dragon will breathe fire today.
It may not have anything to do with Davey except for the story he's bringing to us about a zebra. That's all I'll say. That's later in the show. And maybe,
I don't even know what it is.
Maybe that's your spirit animal.
I thought the whole thing was we had no clue what it was, and then we had to react to it. But apparently you know what it is.
I know what it is because I wanted to know what was in our show.
Oh, I don't want to know. I don't even want to know what this. This segment needs to be a complete surprise. I'm glad. Now I know it's a zebra. So I'll react to the zebra later in the show.
Chad, who's pissed off for greatness, it may be because we still haven't heard anything on Aaron Rodgers. However, Jets and Giants.
Jets are definitely pissed off.
Jets and Giants making the headlines as we start today. The New York Jets, according to reports, they've come to terms with one of Rodgers' favorite receivers, Alan Lazard from Green Bay, and another report from Diana Rossini who says that in the meeting last week with Jets decision makers who flew out to California with Aaron Rodgers, he has a wish list, the Amazon wish list of who he wants to join him in New York, and that also includes Randall Cobb and Odell Beckham Jr. The Jets are making moves to do that after yesterday's report that he still hasn't told New York or Green Bay what he intends to do. But Chad, it's all but done. Trey Wingo has been on the breaking news side of the reports for Aaron Rodgers in previous seasons, off seasons. Wingo says it's done. The trade's done. It's finalized. This seems to be the last bit of it. And maybe, Chad, maybe we see Rodgers make an announcement soon. It did not come with Pat McAfee today. The wait continues, but this is a good sign that the Jets have their quarterback.
It's a good sign that we're getting closer to the end. I wish it would end. It is also fun, though, just to follow the trends of everyone trying to guess what's happening. I don't think it's much of a guessing game now. This would be the ultimate game of chess and not checkers if Aaron Rodgers just simply got all of his buddies another contract and then retired. He just complete, hey, I'm going to get all my guys signed on with the Jets and then announce my retirement after just to see if I can do that. I don't think that's what's happening. I think he's going to end up a Jet because they're now setting about bringing on the free agents that he wants. And this is a big power play by Aaron Rodgers, and understandably so. But that as part of this deal, he can go to them and say, here's who I'd like to throw passes to. Here's who I'd like to be teammates with in New York. It's going to help our team. It's going to help our offense. Really kind of shows the power of Aaron Rodgers in this whole deal. The other thing about the power of Aaron Rodgers is, we're all sitting here waiting on his, not every word, a word. Yes or no. That's the word we're waiting to hear from Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
Hopefully we hear it today.
Playing or not is what we're waiting on. And, look, rightfully so. Future Hall of Famer. The biggest move since Tom Brady was on the move at the quarterback position. And Brady also brought players with him to Tampa Bay.
Antonio Brown?
And one of the players that he brought, and Shaq Mason, was just traded to Houston on the offensive line from Tampa late yesterday at offensive guard. The New York Giants have also made a blockbuster trade. They've acquired Darren Waller of the Las Vegas Raiders in exchange for a third-round pick. Now, if you go back to the trade deadline, that what they've essentially done, and Joe Shane has done a phenomenal job over the last 4 or 5 months with this, knowing that they're acquiring Darren Waller from Las Vegas. They had the 100th pick in the NFL draft. That was a compensatory pick that first came to Kansas City whenever they lost Ryan Poles to become the new general manager of the Chicago Bears. Kansas City was awarded that third-round pick. It was 100th overall. KC traded that in exchange for Kadarius Toney to the Giants, who have then turned that pick into Darren Waller of the Las Vegas Raiders. So Joe Shane, in essence here, he has traded Kadarius Toney for Darren Waller. Great move for the Giants and a great weapon for Daniel Jones. And Waller was nearly, we'll tie in Rodgers with this, he was nearly a part of the package deal that got Davante Adams to Vegas. Yeah. Waller was mentioned for that.
Yeah.
So they were nearly exchanged, and he was going to be in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. Now he's playing in New York, just not for the Jets, the New York Giants.
Is Evan Ingram still under contract with the Giants?
No, Evan Ingram is now with Jacksonville.
Oh, Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Okay. Who was the tight end I'm thinking of with the Giants?
Well, he was there. Ingram was there.
But this past year, though, I'm trying to think of someone they had that was pretty good.
Yeah, they had a rookie who was good.
I mean, Darren Waller clearly is going to be the guy at tight end, but I'm trying to think of who they're pairing Darren Waller with now.
This puts in perspective Waller's impact for them at the position. NFL research says Darren Waller has more career seasons with over 1,000 receiving yards than all other tight ends in Giants history combined. That's all you need to know about the impact of this guy.
And what are the Raiders doing?
They're changing their offense.
Are they blowing it up? Are they trying to acquire a lot in the future? Or are they just, hey, we know this guy's a great player, but he doesn't really fit our offense? I feel like a good offensive mind would make Darren Waller work in whatever offense.
Well, they have Josh Jacobs under contract, under the franchise tag. Davante Adams is still there. They have, Jacoby Myers, who has just signed with them from New England, who, of course, knows Josh McDaniels there and the tie-ins with New England for their head coach. They bring over Garoppolo from San Francisco, and they also have Hunter Renfrow, at least right now. So the Raiders are in a position where they've got to figure things out fast. I still think rookie quarterback could be in play for them. I know a lot of people are saying because of the money they're giving Jimmy G, that's not going to be the case, but I tend to think they have to swing big in the draft for a quarterback as well, knowing that Garoppolo doesn't necessarily always play, right?
Yeah.
That's the other big factor.
So I'm trying to see who this is on Twitter. It looks like a player. Someone with 77,000 followers just tweeted out, yo, at OBJ, the Jets, and Odell Beckham Jr. just responded with the eye emojis wide open. This was 9 minutes ago to the reports about Odell Beckham Jr. being not on the enemies list of Aaron Rodgers, but the wish list to the Jets of players he wants to play with in New York.
Again, Darren Waller is now
the updates,
Giants.
by the way, I'll be giving until Aaron Rodgers gives official word. I'm just scouring the internet for Instagram posts, stories, Facebook likes,
rumors,
tweets, anything from any of these players or anyone that may be connected to Aaron Rodgers or the Jets. I'll be acknowledging all of them until Aaron Rodgers speaks.
Darren Waller to the Giants, maybe Odell Beckham Jr. to the Jets. That's according to Rossini, who Aaron Rodgers apparently told to the Jets he wants on that roster. And that was the rumor for Green Bay had they made the playoffs, that we could see him, Odell Beckham Jr. there in Green Bay. Chad, we also are watching the Lamar Jackson saga play out in Baltimore. There is a report, I believe Schefter threw this out there, and there's no reason to think it's incorrect. I just don't know from his perspective if it's fully guaranteed. I don't believe it is. Or if they could get out of this contract prior to the $200 million third year of the contract offer locking in, which I expect is the case. But there's a report, and it was picked up by Wingo's site at the 33rd team, that Schefter, just threw out there, was like, well, it was $133 million fully guaranteed, and then year 3 it was up to $200 million. So a headline was put out that he has turned down a $200 million fully guaranteed contract of whatever the length of the duration of the years and salary would be. So Lamar Jackson, who we haven't heard from, sends this in response and has the crazy eyes. And then he says in a further tweet that it needs to be known that he, of course, is representing himself. And he says, and some of y'all think that I shouldn't represent myself, I should have an agent. Meaning like the $200 million in year 3, fully guaranteed, but I need an agent. Again, that's already been out there. And the $200 million in year 3, Chad, I believe is something that they could have cut losses with or restructured based on all that. So Jackson's saying don't pay attention to the $200 million headline.
If you're, now there's a lot of reports out there, speculation about every team in the league feels like the Ravens will just match whatever's offered.
Yeah.
Because they can. But if you're a team that needs a quarterback, why don't you just try?
That was my point
last week and this week. But to call their bluff.
Yes.
But my issue would be, okay, even if you believe that,
I know,
and you want a Lamar Jackson, why don't you just?
Well, that's my collusion argument. Within an hour of him being tagged non-exclusively,
there
are reports where we're not interested. We're not interested at all. At all.
What else is going on here?
Again, they do not. I don't. The owners absolutely don't want to set a precedent of fully guaranteed money.
But is that what I'm saying is, do people believe something else about Lamar Jackson that we're not seeing, other than the obvious injury concerns?
There's no way
where he's not finishing a season.
That cannot be the case.
The last 2 years,
we heard from the head coach and the general manager in Baltimore right after the season. John Harbaugh's telling the media and speaking to his fan base in Baltimore, saying there's a 200% chance that we're going to get an extension done long term with Lamar Jackson. You have Eric DeCosta saying he's going to be back with us. We want him back. You have players in the locker room after he missed the game in Cincinnati in the postseason, to where right after that, locker room cleanout day, we want Lamar Jackson back. We've got to have 8 back with us. But yet, all of a sudden, it's not worth picking up the phone if you're another organization and saying, hey, let's work something out. Now, this is where he needs an agent. I've said this. I think he's played this well until now, because I think he needs an agent to get his side of the story out there. Because right now, Baltimore's controlling this, and the media is getting one side in a text message. Right? One of Adam Schefter's 6 phones is blowing up from Baltimore or from another organization telling them whatever they've offered Baltimore.
Well, in the interest of collusion, which this is what this is and I have agreed throughout that that's what's going on, but it's going to be impossible to prove.
Yeah, that's fair.
It would be a lot easier for the league and the owners to get their point across that Deshaun Watson is the exception and not the rule if they would actually negotiate with Lamar Jackson and tell him exactly what the Ravens are telling him. This is your worth. This is the guaranteed money you'll get. You're not going to get all of it fully guaranteed to the level of Deshaun Watson. And if he hears that from 7 or 8 other teams, then he probably starts to believe it. But I think by not even talking to him, I understand we don't want to waste our time. If you're the league, he's like, we feel the same as the Ravens, but we're not going to waste our time because even if we made an offer, they're going to match it, yada, yada, yada. But if you're going to collude and make sure that Deshaun Watson doesn't happen again, why not collude to the level of not making it look as suspicious and just having fake negotiations with Lamar Jackson, offer him about exactly what the Ravens have been offering, and get it through to him that this is the market value for you. This is what you'll get in guaranteed money, and that way he'll just go back to Baltimore, which everyone thinks he's going to do in the end, no matter what, and sign his contract that's not equal to Deshaun Watson. Well, if that's what they ultimately want.
And the Ravens have played this
well. And I do think that's what the owners want.
The non-exclusive tag is going to pay him $11 or $12 million less than the exclusive tag, around $33 million, fully guaranteed in 2023. Could have made $45 had they put the exclusive tag on it. But now they get 2 first-round draft picks in exchange if another team offers him a contract they're not willing to match. I do think, though, this is them saying, and it's smart on their behalf, saying, hey, here's our offer. It's the $133 million, 3 years. And then the extra years that aren't going to really count is essentially what they've offered. And you've got Lamar saying, no, I want the Deshaun Watson contract. Baltimore said, that's our offer. And if you can find something better, we'll let the market dictate what we're going to pay you. So they've doubled down by saying, just like Lamar's done, they've doubled down by saying, find something better and we'll match it. If you can't, there's our offer. Take it. And you can still negotiate a long-term extension with the franchise-tagged player up to a certain point of the offseason. So maybe after he agrees that, okay, this is our offer, he'll take that deal. Or he'll just play 1 year, and then we go through the process all over again a year from now. It's one or the other.
I
don't know what
think
level
something will get done.
I don't know what level they're willing to match. My
Yeah.
guess is they don't think another team, and to this point it's true, got to wait until tomorrow for the league year to begin for they can pick up the phone and call a player. To this point, they've played this well. And I think until this moment, Lamar has.
Yeah, I don't see him playing out the 1 year. I think something will get done regardless, long term.
Chad, I'm hearing a lot about Atlanta, Chicago, and the moves they made yesterday. And I like what both of those organizations did. I think just looking at the moves Denver made, Russell Wilson is a big winner as the Sean Payton era is officially underway in Denver, in Mile High. They add in some high-priced, big-name offensive linemen that you probably don't watch whenever you're watching the games. But this Denver offensive line, they allowed 63 sacks last season. 55 of those went to Russell Wilson. The others went to the backups while Wilson was injured. Dead last in the league, their offensive line when it came to protecting the quarterback. They bring in right tackle Mike McGlinchey. It's been a position for Denver where they failed trying to find the guy on the right side of the line. He started McGlinchey every game last season in San Francisco. He's coming off of a career year. He's right in his prime. And again, he's consistent. Denver needs that. And then Payton addresses the interior offensive line, which is even worse than what's happened at the tackle spot, by going out and getting one of the guys who protects Lamar Jackson in a run-based offense, and Ben Powers. He can play both left and right guard, and a massive upgrade. Needs better protection in the pocket, in the cylinder, so that he can run this offense for Sean Payton and get back to what Wilson does best. And on top of that, they bring in backup quarterback Jarrett Stidham, because we now know the last 2 years, Wilson's missed games. First 9 seasons, didn't miss a single game. 3 games each of the last 2 seasons he's missed. And then they bring in a pass rusher in Zach Allen to replace Draymond Jones. And Allen is just a physical pass rusher that played for Vance Joseph in Arizona's defense. Joseph is now the DC in Denver. I like what they've done, even though the names are not, the flashy spotlight, neon sign, look at me type signings that we've seen across the league. I think it was smart, and I think Wilson's the big winner from day one.
Yeah, and it's smart also because you are establishing the Sean Payton brand.
Yeah.
Regardless of what would have happened, the fact that you make a big splash and you go pick a direction, right? Like pick, this is our identity now. This is what we are saying to the world that we need to work on the most. And what they're saying to the league is our offensive line is bad, and we're going to establish things up front in this Sean Payton era, and we're going to help out Russell Wilson that way. I think that's a smart move. I think it sends a message to the locker room about what you want to accomplish this year, and it's just a clear direction. And that's why you go get a Sean Payton who's won a Super Bowl, is you go get a guy that's going to give you clear leadership and direction, and that's what he's giving Denver already. 63
sacks allowed, and then on defense, the emphasis has to be on stopping the run. Denver lost 8 games by a touchdown or less last season. And a lot of it was due to the other team being able to run the clock out on them. And Allen's a good upgrade on the exterior defensive front as a pass rusher that can help in that department. Hit us up with your thoughts at OutKick 360. Coming up, switch gears. We head to the tournament. We've got our Cinderella storylines that we are going to predict, plus the Final Four. The Blue Bloods were buying and selling. And an hour from now, Tim Brando joins us on OutKick 360.
Does it feel like we're every single year, it feels like we start things off earlier than the year before? Like it blew my mind. Like I was scrolling through social media like last week or the week before last, and you got Vanderbilt rolling, you got Florida going, Kentucky's now going, but then you got some schools that are holding off, till the middle of March, to start spring practice. Before you know it, Mike, like the national championship's going to end, and 2 weeks later they're going to start spring practice. It's getting crazy, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I thought coaches had a little bit more control over when these things started, but I guess not always the case. And I'll give you an example, Trey. I heard Hugh Freeze was kind of upset that they started so early. They started last week, and not that he didn't want to go to camp, but he has just been on the ground running since day one. He's not had time to get away. He wanted a little bit of a break, but hey, that's life in the SEC. You got to do it when you got to do it. And another little anecdote: one of my buddies covers the Florida Gators, so he took off the week prior to spring practice. He thought it was the perfect time just to recharge for fall camp. And what do you know? 3 coaches exit for the NFL. I mean, that was the worst time to take a vacation, but that's life in the SEC.
And it looks like Florida's shoring up the tight end spot, position. We get to this point where, some guys are on breaks right now. Some coaches are. They take this final week. They want to dip off. They're going to spend time with the family because, from next week until July, they don't get a break. And I'm interested. That's one thing I wanted to ask you about when it comes to college football and where we are at right now. I had this conversation. I was talking with former Tennessee assistant T. Martin, talking with a couple other assistant coaches about this with the recruiting calendar. How much change, in your opinion, have we seen? Because I have my thoughts, but I want your thoughts on how much change we've seen when it comes to the recruiting calendar when you add in the transfer portal and you're adding NIL to the conversation. Like, Mike, these jobs for these coaches have changed in the last 2 years. It's been more added to it. And yeah, they make money. They make good money in the Power 5 level, but job titles aren't the same anymore, brother.
No, and you're seeing it more and more. I mean, the NFL has always been an intriguing option for a lot of these coaches, but it was pretty stunning when a guy like Steve Spurrier made that jump to the NFL. Now, it seems like all these coaches, the first chance they get, it don't matter where it is or what the position is. Hey, I'm going to the NFL because I don't want to have to deal with all this other BS. Like you said, the recruiting, the NIL, the transfer portal, and not only having to deal with all that, but having to deal with all of that essentially in the same period. I mean, it's just incredibly wild. I think they really screwed up with this early high school signing period. It doesn't make any sense now. And now that we got the expanded college football playoff coming right around the corner, I mean, we are going to have what is essentially now the signing day, the national signing day, the week of the college football playoff. So how locked in can Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and them be for recruiting when they will likely have a game in about 3 days to prepare for that is going to determine how successful their season is? I mean, something has to be done. It's hard for me to feel too bad, Trey, for some of these guys making $10-11 million, but they're at the high bar. I mean, there's most of the assistants are doing all the work and they're not getting paid near as much. So yeah, I mean, we're just going to keep losing more and more quality coaches to other things because we're just putting too much on these guys.
Tournament officially tips off tonight, and then the madness really gets going on Thursday. Glad you're with us. OutKick 360 rolls on. The most consecutive tournament appearances. Number one probably doesn't surprise you, but I was surprised by the top five. Chad, Kansas,
Yep.
number one. with the most consecutive tournament appearances, followed by
Michigan State. Yeah.
With 25. Kansas has 33 straight seasons. Michigan State with 25. Gonzaga with 24. It's hard to believe now it's been 24 years of the Zags in the tournament.
It's also amazing that the West Coast Conference is, getting at most 3 into the dance, usually 2. It's usually them and St. Mary's, but that they've been able to do that for that long. Being a 1, maybe 2 bid league. It's not like they're in a Power 5.
So Kansas is the 1 seed in the West. You have Michigan State as the 7 seed in the East. Gonzaga is the 3 in the West. And then you see a drop-off. So it goes from 33 years for Kansas, 25 for Michigan State, 24 for Gonzaga, and then 8 for Purdue. Houston with 5, as well as Tennessee with 5. Purdue, they're the 1 in the East. Houston's the 1 in the Midwest, and Tennessee's the 4 in the East. I say all that because this isn't the first year we've seen the Blue Bloods down with that considerable drop-off from those programs to the rest. And that makes for a wide-open tournament, especially when you see where these teams are seated.
Yeah, I had a little bit more fun this year filling out a bracket for that reason, because while I didn't have a ton of, and we're going to talk about our entire bracket and Final Four picks and all of that, but I didn't have anything like big-time crazy happening, but every time I go through every matchup, I could see the insane happening, right?
Yeah.
Like I eventually got back to, okay, it's a little chalky at times, my bracket, but if you told me X happened and this was the national champion, this is a year where I would believe almost anything.
If Michigan State is the 7, went on a run.
Pick a Mountain West team. Utah State, or Boise State.
Big East.
Nevada coming out of the play-in game. Nothing would surprise me about, certain things would surprise me. But Sweet 16, Elite 8 games of the top 10 or 11 seeds in this tournament, there's not many of those that would be totally shocking to me.
And the Cinderellas this year, I'm looking for the great storylines more than I am the seeds of where they're coming from. And, Chad, my Cinderella pick for the Sweet 16, Furman. Give me Furman. They end the 40-year drought of making the tournament. They have Virginia on Thursday. It's the second tip-off of the tournament. And then they'll take on the winner of San Diego State and Charleston. They won 27 games. They attempt 27 threes on average per game. They can shoot it lights out. And if they start ripping it from beyond the arc, they're moving on in my bracket. I've got them in the Sweet 16 taking on Bama. And for me, that's where it ends. But, Chad, Furman's my pick. Give me the sharpshooters. Look, I'm betting on the fact that they come in and they shoot it well. They can certainly go cold. But 27 wins tells you they're very consistent with that.
So I thought long and hard about another 27-win team, Iona, and Rick Pitino.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit more about old Ricky P coming up later. One of the best clips you'll ever see on a question about St. John's. But I went bigger. Now, I did not pick this team in my bracket. Full disclosure, okay?
SEMO?
So, I did pick SEMO in the play-in game tonight.
They play tonight.
In fact, I've got a bet for you later on SEMO if you'd like. I've got both underdogs tonight and winning on the money line.
Nice.
Both Pitt and SEMO are underdogs tonight. I think both of them win. So I didn't go with Iona. That's going to be a pretty trendy pick with Rick Pitino going against UConn. I went with a school that's breathing some mountain air right now, and that is UNC Asheville. I think that UCLA is prone for an upset here. Not that they looked bad in that Pac-12 tournament. They lost a classic to Arizona in the final. Losing Jalen Clark is big. Best defensive player on their team. He's a Naismith Defensive Player of the Year finalist for UCLA. If I was looking at 15 seeds and I'm thinking if a 2 seed is to go down, I think it's UCLA against UNC Asheville. UNC Asheville is led by the Big South Player of the Year, Drew Pember. He's a kid from Knoxville, from Bearden High School. Hutton and I called one of his state championship games. He's a Tennessee transfer. He looks like he's the secondary speaker to Aaron Rodgers at the Psychedelics Conference, that he's the second speaker, not the keynote. He's got a man bun. He was perfect for the whole Asheville feel.
The opener.
On that team. Give me UNC Asheville as the big Cinderella. I'm stepping out on a limb here, but I think that we're going to see a 15-2, And if it's going to be anyone, it's going to be the Asheville Bulldogs over UCLA in round 1.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This was the case several years back. UNC Asheville has the lowest budget, spending money budget, of any athletic department in D1.
But their psychedelics budget is
Well, that makes them a true Cinderella.
in Asheville. Yeah.
So,
I've been to Asheville many times, and that's a place that likes to get after it. Give me Asheville over UCLA.
the Blue Bloods are
That
down.
surprised me, though, that of all the schools.
Yeah, as far as
There's
the
368 Division I basketball schools, by the way.
the lowest.
68 of them are playing in this tournament. But if that's 300 schools that aren't playing.
And now the transfer portal, by the way, is wide open for them.
That's right.
You know, and the teams in the tournament are focusing elsewhere. Blue Bloods are down. We just hit on that, and we've hit on it all year when you look at the top 25. But there are several I'm buying, Chad. Kansas, Bill Self is back. They make runs in the tournament. They certainly made the title run last year. Jalen Wilson, awesome. And look, I'm taking Kansas's experience here and their bracket. I think things line up for them, even though they're not going through Kansas City, which is where Houston earned the right to go over Kansas because the committee, I guess, factored in Bill Self's health with this. He'll be back for the tournament, and that's great news. I'm buying Kansas. I'm buying Duke. John Shire's done a great job in year 1, and a 9-game win streak. They're one of the hottest teams coming into the tournament, hot at the right time. That certainly matters and why I'm taking them. And to a degree, they're playing with house money. No one's talking about them at all. And I like that aspect. And the Zags. They beat St. Mary's in the West Coast Conference Championship by 26 points. That is a conference record for a title matchup for them. And they average 87 points per game. They shoot nearly 60% from the field. Drew Timme, outstanding player. He's having a career season in his decision to come back. And they're the only school to make the last 7 Sweet 16s. So I think the Zags continue that trend.
I've got Gonzaga going far in my bracket. I'll show you how far soon.
All right.
I do not consider them a blue blood. They are a usual suspect for sure now in the tournament.
Yeah.
Blue bloods are very few and far between. Of my blue bloods,
They're there.
Hutton, I'm buying you on Kansas and Duke. I think Duke is playing great at the end of the year. Kyle Filipowski is a matchup nightmare for people. Their three-point shooting's gotten a lot better. I think they're going to go far. Kansas, to me, is a no-brainer, what they were able to accomplish a year ago. Jalen Wilson is a true difference maker, and Bill Self being back. I think the blowout 20-point loss to Texas in the Big 12 championship game, a mere setback. They're going to go far in this tournament, have a great chance at a repeat. The ones that another one I'm buying, Hutton, is Kentucky. I really think that the Wildcats, even though they lost to Vanderbilt, we saw it in spurts throughout the year, right? The moment that we would start questioning everything about Kentucky, their culture, their coaching, everything else, they would go on a run. I think they're going really outside of the Vanderbilt games recently, 2 losses. They've been pretty good. They went to Arkansas and won big. They beat Auburn by 26 points. They've been playing better. I think Cason Wallace back now at point guard is going to help them. Oscar Tshiebwe is going to come up big. I like their draw. I think, I'm not saying Elite 8 Final Four. I do think Kentucky gets to the second weekend. I think they get through their first 2 games and get to the Sweet 16. So I'm buying them. Of the blue bloods I'm selling, it's just UCLA. And really only because their injury concerns. And it's not just Jalen Clark. It's also their big man who injured his shoulder, who's probably going to give it a go, but not be 100%.
Well, see, I am selling Kentucky. I'm not buying in there because John Calipari, whenever the seeds were announced, the matchups were announced, he held a presser with the media. And he admitted that he told his team that unlike what we did going into Nashville at the SEC tournament, I told our group, if you don't practice all 3 days going into this game, you're not playing. You're not starting. You're not in the starting lineup. That tells me that guys were opting out of practice and they're not hurt. And I don't catch the vibe for a team that with their last 3 losses have been to Vanderbilt and Georgia. I don't buy this team as a blue blood that's going very far in the tournament, especially with I do think they're feeling the pressure as well of getting out of the first round. Unlike last year, not having back-to-back bounces, and they're facing a Providence team that gets after it. So I don't think the matchups are great for Kentucky simply because this is a year where Kentucky's just not that good compared to what we've seen. I kept waiting all year, though. Chad, you and I discussed this 3 months ago. There's going to be a time where things click for Calipari's team. That's normally the case. It's a slow build, and then you hit conference play, and by the time they go to the SEC tournament, even though they may not win the SEC tournament, they're playing very well. You got to be on to beat them. That just wasn't the case for Kentucky down the stretch, and they never grasped that consistency that I felt like we'd see. Because of that, I don't view them in the same lens as some of the teams I took because of the up and down play. They can reach the second weekend, but I'm looking this through a lens of what Kentucky and the standard is, and I just don't see them meeting the standard.
I'm very intrigued by this storyline of Bryce Hopkins, who's Providence's best player, being the Kentucky transfer,
Leading
and
them in scoring
knowing all the guys
yeah.
on this team, and averaging close to 17 points per game. I like that head-to-head in round one.
They're better matched up Kentucky. They're head-to-head better than the other guy they're across from. But in this case, I found it odd that Calipari was pointing to practice time. And if you're opting out of practice, you're not going to start. You're going to be down the bench. And he was, asked to clarify about injuries and stuff. He's like, no, I want guys that are ready to go. We got to prepare.
Yeah, I think, look, if you're buying, and I'm buying Kentucky, so yeah. I'm not buying them because I think that Calipari's culture is terrific. I'm buying them because I think their talent is great. And as fluky as this tournament can be, and it was a year ago, Kentucky was playing very well.
Yeah.
They were much better a year ago. They had at the time the National Player of the Year for that year, Oscar Tshiebwe, who's taking a step back this year. And they lose to St. Peter's in the first round. It's fluky. And that was a pretty fluky run from St. Peter's as they got hot at the right time. I think the reverse could happen this year simply based on Kentucky's talent. I'm not going to say that's a big predictor of future success or that John Calipari has righted the ship with his tenure at Kentucky, but I do think these first two matchups, Providence and likely Kansas State, are advantageous matchups for Kentucky to get to that Sweet 16. I don't have them going further than that, though.
Chances are, if you're betting on a conference champion to go on and win the national championship in the same season, that doesn't tend to happen. The conference tournament champion. The last 10 champions from the NCAA tournament, we certainly know Kansas from the season prior with the matchup against North Carolina. But Baylor, Virginia, you can go on and see how many they've won. Villanova, Duke, UConn. Give me the Blue Bloods. One of these Blue Bloods is making a run, Chad, that we're buying or selling. They're winning this tournament this year.
I would guess from this group, certainly Kansas. I really like Duke right now. UConn is difficult for me because I do think that it's going to be a tough matchup against Iona in round one. Baylor's got a pretty good draw to do some damage in this bracket also. I agree with you, Hutton. Odds are it will be one of them, but this is the perfect year for someone that's never won it or that hasn't been there in years to have a chance of winning it all.
And the seeds are 1, 2, and then you see UConn at 7. That's intriguing as we go through the bracket. First-time champion. Chad?
It's Alabama.
Yeah. I think they're winning.
You picked Alabama. I picked Alabama. I think it's a horrific story. I think the dark, ominous cloud of the murder and Brandon Miller playing without sitting at all is going to follow this team all the way to Houston. I also watch basketball a lot, and this is the best basketball team in America. There's no doubt about it. From every team that I've seen, they can beat you in every possible way. They are an underrated defensive team. They're one of the best defensive teams in the country, on top of being a great shooting team from the outside. They get the ball to the rim. They've got great dunkers down low that if you collapse and help, they're going to lob it up to the rim and someone's going to dunk over the top of you. It's a great basketball team. They're my national champion. I think it's going to be a horrible story. I hope they don't win it for obvious reasons, and I've been very vocal about it. But I pick with my brain and not with my heart, and I've got Alabama winning it all as a first-time champion.
We have a mixed opinion on the Final Four. I've got Bama as well. I'm with Chad. Brandon Miller's playing for a reason. He wasn't disciplined here, at least on the court, for a reason. Alabama's cutting down the nets. I have them playing Kansas State in the Final Four. And on the opposite end of the bracket, Houston and UConn coming from the 4 seed out of the West. I think that the Cougars continue to make their run. They're very talented as well. We get a rematch, and Bama's already shown us what this rematch happens to be like, with Bama beating Houston head-to-head in the national championship game. I really like Kansas State. Chad, you turned me on to them just based on Jerome Tang.
Yeah,
and
he's done an awesome job.
Fantastic. I mean, they were picked last in the Big 12.
Yeah,
and
great story.
To see where they are now as a 3 seed, with the different ways they can beat you. They play really good defense. They can get up and down the floor on offense. Keontae Johnson, he's the guy from Florida that no one wanted because of the health issue, right?
A heart issue, yeah.
Just carted off.
He collapsed.
Yeah, and this is a team of transfers. We're seeing it right before our eyes in the transfer portal. Give me K-State. Very talented. And there's one other team.
I love this national championship game you have, by the way, in the city of Houston.
In Houston.
This would be Houston versus Alabama in Houston would be awesome.
Yeah, a great. There's another team, though, that's very intriguing, and it's Arkansas. They have 2 lottery picks. No one else has 2 lottery picks in their roster. So if you're just going based on talent and a team coming hot, it could be the Razorbacks. I have them bowing out earlier, of course, than the Final Four. But K-State and UConn, I have making a run to face Alabama and Houston. Who do you have?
So Arkansas would get Kansas in round 2, which hurts them in the 8-9 game. They get Illinois to start. I love Houston, by the way. I love your pick there. The Marcus Sasser injury in that semifinal of the AAC tournament concerns me.
Yes.
He's probably going to give it a go.
Yes.
I don't know that he's 100%.
Right.
So that's what gives me a little bit of concern on that one. So my Final Four, I've got Alabama and Marquette.
Nice.
Shaka Smart.
Yeah.
Goes from VCU. He's great there. Goes to Texas, where he's got every resource in the world. Disappoints at Texas. Goes back down a notch to Marquette. Great basketball history at Marquette, but not the resources of Texas. And in year 2, the guy's got a chance to go to the Final Four as a number 2 seed. I love that Marquette
team. Did you hear what
team.
he said after the game, after the Big East and the
No.
So he was asked why he's made things work at Marquette, and he goes, because we have people above me who treat others like human beings.
Wow.
I mean, if you don't take a shot at Texas by saying that, I don't know what he's referring to. That is massive to me, what he was saying. He's like, we treat each other here like human beings. People care about what we're doing, and it's shown on the floor. I love that, just the sheer honesty of what Shaka Smart was saying.
That is a crazy shot, no doubt about it. So I got Alabama, Marquette on one side, Gonzaga, Indiana on the other. I've got Houston going down the Sweet 16.
Indiana making a run would be
Dan
fun,
Dockich's Hoosiers. Indiana, Gonzaga. Give me the Bulldogs. Gonzaga back to a national championship game where they will lose once again in a national championship game, this time to Alabama.
Chad, real quick, where do you have Memphis bowing out?
Because this was one of my most difficult decisions. I had them losing to Purdue in round 2.
Okay.
But I badly wanted to pick Memphis to upset Purdue in round 2, but did not do it.
I have Memphis doing that, and then they lose in the Sweet 16 to Duke. But Memphis, just watching them head-to-head this year against Houston, it's hard.
Some good games.
It's hard not to pick Memphis advancing. And Penny Hardaway's team also catching some heat.
Kendrick Davis is awesome. The
Moving on
transfer
to the
from
second
SMU,
weekend. Yeah.
he's terrific.
Chad, Rick Pitino is in this tournament, and Rick Pitino hasn't been this thirsty since, well, I think we all know.
Porcini.
Details next on OutKick 360.
I've eaten there. Terrific restaurant.
I was asked by the Sporting News to interview Bob Gibson at the All-Star game as a writer, so to speak, and about power pitching. And it came on the heels. I had struck out 300 back-to-back years or the year before, and so they wanted me to talk to him. So I had a chance to sit down with Mr. Gibson and interview him. And I think initially he was kind of, whatever. But I think once he realized that I was into it, I knew who Mr. Gibson was. I was born and raised in the game of baseball, and so I revered this man because of the respect my dad had for him. And the respect that Mr. Clemente had for Mr. Gibson, too. Clemente was my favorite player. And so I sat down and started talking to him. And I think once he realized, I started spitting out his stats and 1.12 ERA and this and that and 3-0 in the World Series, 3 complete games, I think once he realized that I had an immense amount of respect for him and I knew who he was, he kind of, I guess I'll use the term loosened up as much as Bob Gibson could loosen up. But we got to talking and I brought up the subject about hitting batters. And, he was the guy. Everybody, when anybody talks about coming inside, they talk about Bob Gibson and Nolan Ryan. And so I said to him, and because I had a unique perspective, I played for Frank Robinson, who was one of the God's good people, one of my favorite people of all time. And Frank, I'll make this argument. I still believe he is the most underrated Hall of Famer in the history of the game. I think he is, when you talk about best players ever, he should be in the top 3, I think, 3 or 4. Anyway, I asked Bob Gibson about Frank Robinson because I think he hit Frank more than he hit almost anybody in his career. And he said, and he was almost offended. He's like, hell no, did I try and hit Frank Robinson? And I kind of was taken aback. And he said, you don't understand. Every single time I hit Frank Robinson, he homered off me in the next at bat. And I was like, oh, okay. The biggest fear, and I said it last week, I'm terrified as an organization if any of my pitchers are in this tournament. Obviously, you don't want, I think it's the Padres are talking about Juan Soto and him getting back and being ready to play in the tournament. I just don't want my pitchers in this game. You can't avoid the collision contact injuries. They generally are rare in baseball, but the pitching stuff worries me. But yeah, if I'm gambling, I got to tell you, I'm very comfortable with Japan at plus 275. Very comfortable. I would have those odds probably lower. I think that they're probably ahead of the USA. And I say that because I haven't seen USA play yet. Their lineup is unbelievable. But there's some questions, and I think your questions around their pitching are legitimate in the sense that the names aren't the same, right? I mean, this is not. I mean, you got Adam Wainwright, who's going to be going, pardon the expression, balls to the wall, because he's 41 years old. This is one of the career highlights. I was on the team that went to Japan in 1998, and I ended up getting hurt after that. That was a max effort, every game meant the world kind of thing that I wasn't expecting or experiencing. And that was after a season of innings. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. I think Japan would be the guy. If I was putting 100 today or 1,000 today, I'd put it on Japan.
Chad, the thirst is more than what we well know it for. OutKick 360 rolls on. There's a longtime head coach in college hoops that
Who stays thirsty.
got your attention last
Looks
night.
like the world's most interesting man. He stays thirsty at all times.
Rick Pitino. And
Ricky P.
the rumors for St. John's. He's currently about to take on Hurley's group with
UConn.
Yeah, UConn, excuse me. Yeah, my Final Four team. And now you've got Iona with Pitino and all the questions about if he's leaving there and where to, and the rumors about St. John's. Here's Pitino discussing that.
I don't know. I wanted, at one time there was talk about an extension, new contract and so on. It didn't work out. But that doesn't mean there's no hard feelings. If anything, it's the opposite. There are great feelings. So I don't know. At the end of the year, I'll look at certain situations. I haven't, even though I'm local, I bet I haven't been to St. John's campus in 30 years. I don't even know how to get there. I'd have to use navigation. So, it's not as easy as people think. They don't think that. I've been through the ACC, the Big East, the Metro, I think, the AAC, the Big East, I said two different times. So I've been through the SEC, and now the MAC. I've been through the Boston University one, whatever that was back then. So I've been through a lot of conferences. So it's not going to blow me away any conference or anything because I've been through it. I've also coached the Knicks and the Celtics.
Let me translate for Ricky P. He said, I've been to 99 cities and I've rocked them all. That's what he's telling America right there. So what's Queens? That's just one more city I'll go to and dominate. I've been to every conference, the old Metro Conference, the MAC, not the MAC, the MAAC that he's dominating right now, the SEC, the ACC, the Big East, the Atlantic Division of the NBA. The guy's gone to every conference and division, and he's dominated other than his stint in the NBA. And
he goes on
I love it. I low-key love Rick Pitino. Always have. He is a great coach. If my school was a big program, and I'm just being general here, taking my sensibilities and knowing Rick Pitino's track record for success, I would love it if my school hired Rick Pitino to be their coach because he's going to coach ball and you're going to win. Now, look, there's some skeletons in that closet, no doubt about it, but it's a program that's going to win and win big.
Yes.
And he's done that at Iona.
Well, yes. And he went on to say, he's like, look, I love the president. We're both friars at heart. He first met him at Providence. And, Chad, he says that his team is not going to be affected by this. Here was his quote. He goes, when I was at Kentucky, there were rumors of me going to 6 NBA jobs. The players don't pay attention to it at all. We don't even address it. The internet doesn't pick coaches, so we don't even address it. Right now, not now as we get ready for UConn. They're talking about it. They're being asked about it in the locker room. I think that does affect them in their matchup.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. So, 96 at Kentucky, they won it all.
Yeah.
In 96. 97, they got back to the national championship game, but lost to Arizona, I want to say, and Miles Simon.
Yes, Simon says championship.
Yes. And then 98, Tubby came in year one and won against Utah. His first year at Kentucky, Pitino left. Yeah. So in the last 2 years, talking about the distraction part, they weren't too distracted. They made it back to a national championship game but lost.
Yeah.
But they won at 96, lost in 97, won again in 98, went to the Celtics. Had the famous quote about, Larry Bird's not walking through that door anytime soon when they were losing. Love Rick Pitino. He's going to go to St. John's. That's also what I take away from this. When you mentioned that, I know we were working on a contract extension at one point, but that fell through. Hey, no hard feelings.
Yeah.
No hard feelings to Iona. He's probably thinking, I'm glad we didn't come up with one because that makes it easier for me to bolt for St. John's now that we didn't get that extension done.
Well, now you've got Pitino who knows that he's right there on the cusp of being through the saga that he's had to coach under.
Oh, he has been. He's Andy Dufresne. He's gone through the sewage system. He has come out in the rain on the other side clean now.
You can tell
he is ready to go, baby.
Yeah.
He has served his penance.
The media baptism.
He away from the game and then to Iona and done well at Iona, kept his nose clean. And Ricky P is back into the big times now. He's going to St. John's.
Chad, college hoops.
Book it.
It can be a 1-month sport for some. And unfortunately, some of those who call themselves experts when it comes to bracketology. We've got that, plus what did Charles Barkley say about the Auburn and Alabama fan bases coming together? That's next, plus Tim Brando in 25 minutes on OutKick 360.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking that we're going to be practicing the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Tim Brando of Fox Sports joins us to talk college hoops. And the NCAA tournament is coming up in 20 minutes. OutKick 360, and just like that, the second hour is here. Hutton and Withrow with you. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, just a quick update of where we are across the NFL. Darren Waller talented tight end out of Vegas with the Raiders. He's been traded to the New York Giants in exchange for a third-round pick. So Waller joins Daniel Jones and plenty of talent with the Giants offense and what they're doing with year number 2 under new leadership from the front office down. And we're still awaiting official word on Aaron Rodgers, but a report from Diana Rossini tells us that he's put together this wish list of Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb, Odell Beckham Jr., Mercedes Lewis, and that the Jets are working on all 4 of those players, bringing them to the organization. And we at least know of 2 with Lazard and with Cobb where they've directly reached out, and it sounds as though that the Jets have already come to terms with Allen Lazard, free agent wide receiver out of Green Bay. And again, we'll keep you updated as more news comes out on day number 2 of the open negotiation across the league. Things become official tomorrow afternoon whenever we take the air starting at 3 o'clock Eastern. Chad, from the college basketball perspective, most of the fans filling out a bracket right now, all of the madness that ensues starting on Thursday, we're really starting to see these teams for the first time. I think the vast majority of those tuned in. That should not be the case for studio hosts and our television options for tournament action.
When talking about the brackets on Selection Sunday during the show on CBS, Clark Kellogg referred to Texas as the Texas Froghorns when talking about them. Now, that is a slip of the tongue, and it's understandable.
Yeah.
You know, TCU's in the field also, the Horned Frogs. So saying that, I give him a pass. He knows it's the Texas Longhorns. He slipped up. No big deal. I say that comical story to tell you the story of something not as comical, and that is the fact that we are going to be inundated with celebrity studio hosts that know nothing about the sport they're talking about or the teams they're talking about in this tournament. And that's a shame. I love Charles Barkley. I love Kenny Smith. I like Candace Parker. These are not men's college basketball analysts that are following the sport and really know the ins and outs of the sport and the teams they're going to be talking about. They're going to learn enough about 7 or 8 teams they feel like are going to play deep into this tournament to be dangerous and talk about the games in a way that will be entertaining. They don't know about the season Charleston has had or UNC Asheville's chances against UCLA or what Drake brings to the table. And I think college basketball as a sport suffers from that a bit. This is not a month where it suffers. This is where America tunes in. College basketball has become a 1-month sport for most of America. People tune in March, and that's it. They fill out a bracket. They skip work Thursday and Friday of this tournament. They're going to go to a sports bar all day. They're going to eat wings. They're going to drink beer, and they're going to have their brackets out like I do right now, right in front of them, and they're going to be Xing teams out or circling them the next round. It's an American institution unlike any other. It is what I believe is the single best sporting event in America when you look at the month that the tournament exists and how many teams are involved. I love it. The Thursday of the NCAA tournament is one of my favorite sports days of the year. Most sports fans out there agree. A lot of them do. And even non-sports fans love the Thursday and Friday to start the NCAA tournament. But if you are invested in college basketball and people being interested in the sport, I think it's mindful of you, if you're in positions of power at Turner Sports or anywhere else, to put people on air talking about the sport that know about the sport in totality. If not, you're just going to have more people who just tune in March because it's sort of a sideshow spectacle. And Hutton, maybe that's ultimately what they want, right? You know, you're going to have the eyeballs there no matter what. There's a reason Turner Sports spends so much to the NCAA for this tournament.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are going to tune in. But I don't think that helps them broaden the gap to make college basketball I'm not even saying from November on thing, but maybe from January on. Instead of making it 1 month, could you extend the interest in just common average sports fans to 2 or 3 months? That's where the sport sort of needs to go next. March has no problem. Everyone's paying attention right now.
Yes, and you know, I'm looking at it from the other sports perspectives. What would the NFL equivalent be of college football discussion? We don't see that crossover like we do here.
Yeah, Kirk Herbstreit going to Prime Video's
but the studio
Thursday
stuff,
night game.
like that, Kirk Herbstreit in the booth is watching games, right? Like the studio shows, though, like it would be like Terry Bradshaw going and covering
exactly
what we're seeing for the big noon kickoff.
It'd be Fox getting the rights to the college football playoff, and instead of bringing Joel Klatt and their college football analyst on, and Urban Meyer, they would go to Terry Bradshaw, Howie Long, Jimmy Johnson, and throw them in the studio with them.
During bowl season or something.
Yeah, during the playoff. That would be the equivalent.
Yeah, and I don't hate Barkley on anything.
I don't either.
I want him as a part of coverage because he's passionate about the game. Even if he's just watching a team for the first time, I like his reaction to watching that team for the first time. I don't need 4 versions of Charles Barkley's expert, quote-unquote, analysis on college hoops, though. It's just, way too much for that end of the analysis, right? I need one guy to entertain me, and it's Barkley. It's no one else on that set. So I wish they would just narrow the focus of what they're trying to get here. And then, especially on the first weekend, we'll see guys rotate in and out versus the entire day being focused on one
Here's
group.
what it'll look like, by the way. So Greg Gumbel is the main host of the studio work in between games, halftimes, everything else. Charles Barkley, Clark Kellogg, Kenny Smith, and occasionally Wally Zerbiak will be a part of that crew. Ernie Johnson will also host a studio in Atlanta that will be with Jay Wright, who I think will be terrific. He was good in the selection show, I thought. Candace Parker, who I think is great on TV. I don't think she's necessarily great with college basketball, but she's a good TV presence. And Seth Davis, who is a writer but knows college basketball.
Right.
Of the people that are in it every day, Seth Davis lives college basketball year-round. That's what he covers. That's what he writes about for The Athletic. So he knows the sport. He knows all these teams and these Cinderella teams. So I think he's fine. But those are the studios.
Would it be advantageous to put they want eyeballs on because Barkley's bringing that presence, right? But would it be advantageous to have, that something that's similar to the Manning cast, where you have the option to view that studio show if you want that, instead of having to flip back and forth to the different studios?
I don't think that I think for sponsorship purposes that Turner probably just wants to keep it on, CBS or wherever they put it. Right, for the national championship game.
I wonder the strategy behind.
Wouldn't Barkley and Kenny Smith be fun in that Manning cast type setting?
Yeah, or anyone with Barkley.
Yeah, just doing the Final Four games, I'm saying.
Yeah, and they split Ernie up from them and put Gumbel with them, right? Or that's what they're doing here. I wonder.
I just think those two would be fun. Like they could host it on their own, just talking about the game and telling stories.
Yeah, Barkley would like to do that with an Alabama fan base, believe it or not. Because of hoops, because it's not football. Both Auburn and Alabama will be playing the first-round matchups in Birmingham.
By the way, awesome for the city of Birmingham.
Oh, it's excellent.
That you have that. We've been down there for USFL stuff. We're attached to that BJCC, the Birmingham great. Jefferson County Community Civic Center.
But just knowing
and that's an awesome setup to have both those teams there.
Just knowing the vibe, though, of the sterile environment of this tournament in round 1 and 2.
It won't be that way there.
No, and that's how they should have treated Kansas and Kansas City.
Yeah.
Honestly, and they sent them elsewhere. But the environment's going to be cordial, Barkley believes, between Auburn and Alabama fans. Listen, this ain't football, so I think Alabama Auburn fans are going to be rooting for each other. That's just my personal opinion. Alabama and Auburn, we hate them in football. They hate us. When you get to the arena as an Auburn fan, if Alabama is playing, you're going to root for them more than likely. Same thing, I think, for Alabama fans. They're going to root for Auburn. That's Charles Barkley on a Zoom call previewing the NCAA tournament for CBS. Chad, you have a theory as to why he feels this way, which is way off base here. They hate each other.
Yeah, I think he's completely wrong about this, especially given the Brandon Miller, the Darius Miles, the whole saga there. Auburn fans even hate Alabama more, just like the rest of America.
Yes.
Will root against Alabama in this tournament. And they're the number 1 overall seed. So you root against the favorite also. I'm going to go on a limb. I don't know where Charles Barkley lives full time, but I feel like he probably hasn't lived in Alabama since he played at Auburn. He played in Philly in the NBA. He played in Phoenix. He played in Houston. I feel like he lives in Atlanta, maybe, is his full-time home now. Charles Barkley, who is a man of the people, and I think does a better job relating to the common sports fan or common American better than almost any celebrity that's on television. He's great at it. I think this is Charles Barkley showing that he doesn't necessarily relate to the state of Alabama right now and those fan bases, and here may be why. Charles Barkley, when he talks to Alabama fans, they love Charles Barkley because most people love Charles Barkley. So if you are inundated with a fan base that is constantly nice to you, telling you how much they love you, and you are big-time Auburn Tiger basketball player Charles Barkley, I can understand how you would be tricked into believing that Alabama fans really don't hate Auburn because it's basketball, because Charles Barkley was a basketball player. And if these Bama fans are nice to me, they're certainly going to cheer on Bruce Pearl and the Auburn Tigers in Birmingham in the NCAA tournament. And my Auburn buddies are all pretty nice that I hang out with. They're going to cheer on the home state team in Alabama. I think that's what's probably fooled Charles Barkley here. I'm trying to think of any excuse, Hutton, because this is a really crazy take from Charles Barkley. They are not going to cheer on each other.
No. Harvey Updike exists, right? Like that storyline is just added fuel from years prior that will never be forgotten. And look, chances are the Alabama fans, at least the ones we saw, the two we saw at the SEC tournament, they don't represent everyone, but they'll be represented in some capacity, and they'll be wearing shirts like Killing Our Way Through the SEC in 2023.
Those guys will be back. Those guys will be back down in Birmingham, so that's not going to help anything.
And who knows, maybe they're bringing more with them since it's in Birmingham.
With the animosity, that's definitely not going to help. Yeah, no, I just, again, I think Charles Barkley is probably around a lot of Bama people that worship him. So it'd be easy to think, oh, well, all Alabama fans must be nice if they're this nice to me.
So UNC not playing in any tournament. Look, Hubert Davis is saying we're not going. Like we have the aspirations of playing in the NCAA tournament. Preseason number 1 by the AP, not making the tournament since they went to the field of 64 before 68. That's the first time it's ever happened. And Davis was saying his Tar Heels aren't playing in the NIT. And look, they're receiving heat for this. I honestly don't have a problem with it. You set your goal. You don't want to go play in the NIT. Tips off tonight. What are the odds we're previewing any of those games for the NIT? And how many starters are back from a team that brought back starters after playing for the national championship that actually factor into developing a team for next year, especially during the transfer portal? This is going to be a turnover. It's the way I view this, and it's on to next season, as it should be based on how this season went. A trip to Madison Square Garden is empty and hollow based on the stance and the expectation of where North Carolina hoops should be and will be back to. The tap-out, opt-out for the National Invitation Tournament. And look, the NCAA took this over. I understand. Like they're wanting – there's one reason why North Carolina is being asked to and demanded, you got to play in this tournament. They want eyeballs on that product. It's added to the TV audience. No one's tuning in for this, though. And, in fact, Carolina's been tuned out. And, Chad, we tuned them out midway through the season based on how they were playing.
Yeah, and I think this is less a university decision to sit this out and more of a roster decision.
It's got to be.
To not want to continue playing. I think Hubert Davis went to his team and just said, what do you guys think? And they all probably very lukewarm.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't want to keep playing. This has been miserable. For North Carolina. Like, it is very difficult to explain. I don't know if there was internal issues or what happened, or they just had a very unlucky and bad season. But that was a group that made it all the way to the national championship game a year ago and led by 15 points in that national championship game before losing to Kansas. They were red hot. Maybe that was a little fluky based on their season last year. They just got hot at the right time, and they weren't really that good. But they got some players in that team that should have been a lot better. And to come in number 1 overall and to not make the NCAA tournament, that's crushing. To have those expectations and not even get an invite to the tournament where you have a chance to redeem yourself after a very frustrating regular season, they're not going to find redemption in the NIT. And they know that. The coach knows that. The fans know that. So I think the players probably made it easy on everyone and just said, we don't want to play. Let's get to the offseason. You can get to your transfer portal. We'll get to ours if it's guys that want to leave. And then we'll run this thing again a year from now and see who's left and see if you can be better next year.
Chad, this is a great example, the haves and the have-nots. Carolina's saying, yeah, we don't need to play anymore. We're on to next year. Meanwhile, you have Detroit Mercy with Antone Davis, who has the 4 points away from setting the new all-time scoring record in college hoops. The CBI did not give them the invite because they could not pay the $27,500 entry fee to play in this tournament. So Pistol Pete's record will remain atop the all-time scoring list for college basketball.
I think
I don't hate that's discussion,
what's right.
But there's no doubt that Detroit Mercy would love the opportunity to play in the postseason and host a game like that. But to do so, you're going to pay $28,000 to do it. For a tournament that I can't even tell you where it's playing.
That's what's right. I'm sure it's at the home venues of there's going to be teams
I'm
hosting.
saying TV-wise.
Yeah.
I mean,
is it on DAZN? I don't know. It's got to be digital only, right?
Yeah.
Do they just do boxing or do they have CBI basketball also? Maybe OutKick can get the rights to that.
Yeah,
that's something we
maybe.
could show on the OutKick network or CBI games. That could be our first property. Here's what I take away from that. Detroit Mercy is one of the 368 Division I basketball teams. This is the beauty and the madness of March Madness. You talked about UNC Asheville's budget. Detroit Mercy couldn't pay $27,500 to get their guy, the all-time scoring leader, crown in NCAA basketball history. Yet there is a scenario where they could play against Texas in the tournament, right?
Yes.
Like they could be matched up with Duke at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy to think about the discrepancy in the bottom end. I mean, through all of them, right? The middle of Division I college basketball, the 30th percentile of it, and then on down to the bottom of the barrel, and Detroit Mercy and a lot of programs that just have no money and no real resources, and this is a great example of that.
And Pistol Pete's record, which has stood for 53 years, it goes on to year 54. Coming up, Tim Brando joins us from Fox Sports. We'll continue with the bracket discussion. He does not have one of our final four teams bowing out early, but he does have a team, Chad, that we did not mention or we have not discussed, cutting down the nets in Houston. Tim Brando with us next on OutKick 360.
Does it feel like we're every single year, it feels like we start things off earlier than the year before? Like it blew my mind. Like I was scrolling through social media like last week or the week before last, and you know, you got Vanderbilt rolling, you got Florida going, Kentucky's now going, but then you got some schools that are holding off, you know, till the middle of March, you know, to start spring practice. Before you know it, Mike, like the national championship's going to end, and 2 weeks later they're going to start spring practice. It's getting crazy, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I thought coaches had a little bit more control over when these things started, but I guess not always the case. And I'll give you an example, Trey. I heard Hugh Freeze was kind of upset that they started so early. They started last week. And you know, not that he didn't want to go to camp, but he has just been on the ground running since day one. He's not had time to get away. He wanted a little bit of a break, but hey, that's life in the SEC. You got to do it when you got to do it. And another little anecdote, one of my buddies covers the Florida Gators. So he took off the week prior to spring practice. He thought it was the perfect time just to recharge for fall camp. And what do you know? 3 coaches exit for the NFL. I mean, that was the worst time to take a vacation, but that's life in the SEC.
And you know, it looks like Florida's shoring up the tight end spot, you know, position. And we get to this point where, you know, some guys are on breaks right now. Some coaches are. They take this final week. They want to dip off. They're going to spend time with the family because, you know, from next week until July, they don't get a break. And I'm interested. That's one thing I wanted to ask you about when it comes to college football and where we are at right now. I had this conversation. I was talking with former Tennessee assistant T. Martin, talking with a couple other assistant coaches about this with the recruiting calendar. How much change, in your opinion, have we seen? Because I have my thoughts, but I want your thoughts on how much change we've seen when it comes to the recruiting calendar when you add in the transfer portal and you're adding NIL to the conversation. Like, Mike, like these jobs for these coaches have changed in the last 2 years. It's been more added to it. And yeah, they make money. They make good money in the Power 5 level, but job titles aren't the same anymore, brother.
No, and you're seeing it more and more. I mean, the NFL has always been an intriguing option for a lot of these coaches, but it was pretty stunning when a guy like Steve Spurrier made that jump to the NFL. Now, it seems like all these coaches, the first chance they get, it don't matter where it is or what the position is. Hey, I'm going to the NFL because I don't want to have to deal with all this other BS. Like you said, the recruiting, the NIL, the transfer portal, and not only having to deal with all that, but having to deal with all of that essentially in the same period. I mean, it's just incredibly wild. I think they really screwed up with this early high school signing period. It doesn't make any sense now. And now that we got the expanded college football playoff coming right around the corner, I mean, we are going to have what is essentially now the signing day, the national signing day, the week of the college football playoff. So how locked in can Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and them be for recruiting when they will likely have a game in about 3 days to prepare for that is going to determine how successful their season is? I mean, something has to be done. It's hard for me to feel too bad, Trey, for some of these guys making $10, $11 million, but they're at the high bar. I mean, most of the assistants are doing all the work and they're not getting paid near as much. So yeah, I mean, we're just going to keep losing more and more quality coaches to other things because we're just putting too much on these guys.
From 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine, OutKick 360 rolls on. Thursday and Friday, throughout the show, Chad, we will be immersed in all things hoops. We'll have the brackets going. We'll be updating you in real time, all the storylines, the upsets, the Cinderella runs, and the discussion about the best games that are happening right in front of us. We'll have it live, and we'll be reacting.
We will bathe in basketball. We will lather in hardwood on Thursday and Friday, like the rest of America.
Plus, we'll keep you updated on all things NFL free agency. Allen Lazard from Green Bay, he signs a 4-year contract will sign a 4-year contract with the New York Jets. That's important because that is reportedly one of the guys that Aaron Rodgers wants on his offense with the Jets. Now, Lazard also, of course, has ties to Nathaniel Hackett, and Hackett is the new offensive coordinator there. Chad, if they end up with Rodgers, this is exactly what Denver was trying to do that they didn't get done.
Yeah.
When Rodgers decided to stay with Green Bay, and now Green Bay has decided they'll trade Aaron Rodgers, and they're waiting on Rodgers to tell them, I'm going to play next year.
And I laugh out loud at tweets and reports I saw that, this is just the Jets' attempt to bring Alan Lazard back to Nathaniel Hackett. That's really the reunion they're looking at. This has nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers. I'm thinking, yeah, that's it. Nathaniel, we got to get Nathaniel Hackett's guys back over here. That's why Lazard's going to be a Jet. There is currently a picture, a screenshot of NFL Network right now, and it's Andrew Siciliano, who's the studio host, and he's got Ian Rappaport and 2 other news reporters on with him, and all 3 of the reporters are on their phone at the same time with the Jets' interest in Aaron Rodgers on the bottom of the screen, and they're all responding to text, trying to get any info they can. They're not unlike us right now. We'll pass on any new info in regards to Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, but Hutton, we're in the waiting game right now with this one.
So the Jets let's presume Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. Here's your offense. Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Alan Lazard. At tight end, they have Tyler Conklin and C.J. Uzuma. And they also, in the backfield, have Breece Hall. They have James Robinson, Ty Johnson, and Michael Carter. And presumably Randall Cobb's on his way. He also wants Mercedes Lewis there, Rodgers does. Corey Davis, I haven't mentioned because Corey Davis, they're trying to trade. Ultimately, they'll cut for salary cap purposes.
Right.
But that's paired with that defense, that's a solid group out of the AFC East against some other solid teams, namely Miami and, of course, in Buffalo. Still waiting to see some other big moves from New England.
I think it helps shrink the learning curve for the offense by bringing in some familiar guys, right? That can help. It's not just Aaron Rodgers, but it's going to be Aaron Rodgers and Hackett, what they want to do. But when you bring in some familiar guys, Lazard, Randall Cobb, I think that helps with the group also. Not that Randall Cobb's going to be some huge part of the offense at this point in his career, but it helps Garrett Wilson, for example, right? When you have other tentacles out there that can help with
Rookie
guys
of the Year, too.
with a quick adjustment to what Aaron Rodgers wants.
OutKick 360 is where you can follow us on social media. Our next guest, Tim Brando, joins us from Fox Sports. Time to continue the bracket discussion with one of the best. Tim, how are you, man?
I'm great. Jonathan, Chad, it's good to be with both of you, and happy March Madness. I celebrated today with a 9 a.m. tea time. If I look a little red, it's because I got a little wind blowing out there today.
How'd you shoot?
I played pretty well. I haven't played in 5 months, and I got around the front side in 44, and then a 42. So I shot 86, which, first time to have the clubs out of mothballs in 6 months. I'm pretty pleased with that.
I'd retire. I'd retire if I shot an 86. That'd be the best ever.
Keep the golf ball.
I would hand them back the clubs, the clubhouse, and just leave and never go back if I shot that well.
Well, if you go on my Twitter line, I have some fun with it because I'm a golfaholic. I really love the game, but I enjoy playing it more than announcing it. And clearly, announcing golf is a tough roster to ever crack. I've done it a few times over at Masters.com, and when Fox had the U.S. Open, I did it 1 year on digital. But I love playing a lot more than broadcasting it, and so I'm fine and dandy with just staying home this time of year and knocking it around a little bit, chasing golf balls and grandbabies this time of year.
Tim Brando with us, Fox Sports, and Tim, Chad and I have the same champion. We've got Alabama. Brandon Miller's playing for a reason, right? We're not stupid here, and they're really, really good. I did see where you've picked Arizona, and they would be coming out of that bracket in the South. Why are you going with the Wildcats?
2 reasons. It's still, listen, if it were a best 3 out of 5, if we had the NBA approach to the NCAA tournament, but we don't, it's one and done. I don't like the draw once they get out of Birmingham. They're going to win the first 2 games. But I mean, if you're an Alabama fan, you better root against Virginia. There is not a team in the country, and certainly not a team in the SEC, that plays with as much discipline and forces you to play their way, quite like Tony Bennett's team. And I do think that the distraction factor with the Miles story, and to some extent for the head coach, Nate Oates, I think it's going to amp up from one regional to another regional. If they happen to get to the Final Four, good for them. I do think they're the best team playing right now. But that's not what the NCAA tournament is about, fellas. It's about matchups. and one and dones. And you have a flat day, if the ball doesn't go in, if the iron is unkind that one day, somebody better bail you out. They're more than clearly, Miller. I mean, he's the best player out there, no question. He's the best college player out there. But they've got more than that. But I think that if they do get past Virginia in the Elite Eight, Arizona is going to be a really tough out. They've played against better defensive teams. They beat a better defensive team in UCLA to win the Pac-12 tournament, and they've got guys that can go double right with Alabama. So I just think in a one and done situation, the issues off the court, the combination of the new stages. This Alabama team has not been in this environment before, and I think that's going to be problematic eventually. So that may shock a few people, but I've seen enough of these to know that the best team doesn't always win.
We just had this conversation about the studio analyst, and I know you've been a part of studios in the past, and bringing in Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, guys that we love, but NBA guys to the NCAA March Madness part of this. And there is some blowback from people that, hey, these guys don't really know college basketball. What do you think about those decisions to bring in NBA people to NCAA tournament coverage?
Well, I'd say those fans need to understand that Turner is paying 80% of the freight. And if they're paying 80% of the contract cost over CBS, they have the right to put whatever the hell they want in the studio. So we'll start there.
Yeah.
I do get the college basketball purists viewpoint here. But the thing that I will say, and I was involved, my last year doing the NCAA tournament was 2013. So I'm 9 years removed, not 10 years removed from it now. But in 11 and 12 and 13, those were the years that it began, that collaboration. And the one thing I'll say about all of those guys, and I'll include Reggie Miller in this as well, they don't presume to tell you that they believe they know all there is to know about college basketball. As a matter of fact, they'll admit up front, I don't see all these teams through the course of the year. So in the case of Reggie, for a number of years, I do think Reggie's not doing the games this year with Dan Bonner and Kevin Harlan. I think Coach Van Gundy is. So, but again, another NBA guy. But Dan Bonner, I've worked with Dan for over 35 years. We did ACC tournaments together and Duke, North Carolina games together at Raycom Sports and Jefferson Pilot back in the day. Dan sees a ton of games, and he will bring some of that to the game site when those three are together, whoever the three may be. Charles is really honest about what he doesn't know. No one could be, more candid about what he doesn't know about the college game than Sir Charles. So I don't have a problem with it because I know the people involved and I know they're being honest about what they're covering. I tell you what really bothers me, fellas, more than anything, is when you're watching a college basketball game and in the middle of it, somebody will bring out some NBA draft guru to tell me where this or that player projects. You are screwing with our game when you do that. The college game is to be celebrated. And these players, the great majority of them, will not be playing at the next level. So why bring a guy in to talk about that in the middle of the most important college basketball games of the year? I have not seen CBS or Turner do that. I have seen it done on ESPN way, way too often. The game should be what matters most. And frankly, when you do that to the sport, I think you're undercutting it quite a bit. But as long as the broadcasters are honest, and frankly, I've learned some things from Charles and from Kenny Smith when they've said, in this situation, strictly from a player's point of view, okay, and that's the prism they're coming from, this is what you need to be able to do late in a game. And sometimes those things are what college players miss, and maybe sometimes even college coaches miss. Okay, so I think basketball is basketball in a lot of ways, but they are two different sports. And I think the balance here has been very, very good. I applaud my old boss, Sean McManus, and the people that were in charge of Turner at the time that it took place and what they've been doing with it since, because I think seeing the whole tournament has been great. Like I said, I experienced it for the first 3 years of the collaboration, and If you love basketball and you want to choose what game you want to watch, you're getting to do that now. In the first, let's see, I did it for 18 years. First 15 years that I did the NCAAs, you were just hoping, that all of the networks could join you when you had a big time moment. We weren't always sure that could happen.
So as someone who grew up watching it, when you mentioned Raycom Sports and Jefferson Pilot Sports, you're speaking my love language at that point in time.
Yeah.
I've been watching Southern Hoops, the docuseries on SEC Network. I know that you were interviewed on and you're a part of. And I think back to that era of college basketball and how localized everything was and how everything felt bigger then with the teams that you were around or the conference you were around. The whole world is smaller now, Tim, in sports and everything that we cover. And I really think that's changed college basketball. But the NCAA tournament kind of remains the same, other than what you're talking about, where you can now just see any game you want on any of those networks at any time. What do you think about those days when you're on Jefferson Pilot and Raycom, to the way the game has changed from then to now, but also how the tournaments remain the same?
Well, it's interesting you say that because you grew up on that.
Yeah.
And people will say, gosh, you were the soundtrack of my life. And that's a humbling thing to hear. But I'll also tell you this. At the same time I was doing my first game on ESPN was in 1985 with Dickie V, and we did Duke and Virginia. I'll never forget it. The late, great Terry Holland was coaching at Jim Larinaga, the Miami head coach, Davey Odom, the outstanding coach of the past at Wake and at South Carolina, on his staff. And Mike was in his first run to the, he had that team that was just a year away from making its first run to the Final Four in 1986. That was an incredible time. And when somebody says to me now, like a fan, for instance, in Providence, I'm coming out of the AMP arena there in downtown Providence, and somebody will say, I grew up on you. And I'm like, well, that really means a lot to me. We love the fact that you're doing Big East games. And so that means a lot to me, too. I was really fortunate to hit college basketball as it was taking off in the mid-'80s. When somebody says to me, the Big East is back, but it's not like the old Big East, I'm like, well, nothing's the way it used to be. College basketball was at its zenith in those days. And that started really after the Bird Magic Final Four in 79 on into 1980, early 80s. When we had it in New Orleans in 82, I was a Cub reporter on Canal Street at WGSO Radio. And I met Kurt Gowdy there for the very first time. He was my mentor. I met Dean Smith in the portal of North Carolina's locker room. He was looking out. I swear to you, I saw this. And one day when I write the book, I'll talk about it. But he was hitting on a cigarette. He was nervous before the Saturday semifinals. And being a young broadcaster that wanted to make his mark, I just walked right up to him and said, hi, Coach Smith, Tim Brando, how are you? And he was like stunned. In those days, the floor was far, far away from anyone. And the locker rooms were like 125 yards from where the arena floor was located. But to get to the bathroom, you had to go that distance. And I just happened to see him, and I thought, gosh, this may be a historic moment. I'm going to go and introduce myself. And he looked at me right after that and said, boy, this is something, isn't it? Looking at the crowd. It was packed to the rafters. Now, that was 41 years ago, fellas. And the tournament took on so much more meaning at that point in time. So when people say it's not the way it used to be, I'm like, well, nothing is. But the NCAA tournament is still not only what it's been, but it's only getting better. I wish the college basketball regular season got more attention because I think the game deserves that. Unfortunately, it's a volume dealer. We provide a lot of programming, but the very networks that carry college basketball have daytime debate shows that don't even discuss it at all. And that's a shame. That is a real shame.
Tim Brando, our guest on OutKick 360. You mentioned the Big East. Your thoughts on the strength of the top end of that conference and the damage that they could do to this bracket for a lot of fans?
Well, the only difference in the Big East, fellas, and the Big 12 and the Big 10 is the number of members. I mean, I'm here to tell you, those teams that didn't get there, okay, St. John's, DePaul. DePaul had the one-loss record is awful, yes, but they could take you to the limit every time out. And so the bad teams aren't really that bad. And once you get to, the middle tier, that top 5 teams, that are in the tournament, you see them. I think there's some deep runs out there. I'll give you an example. I think Xavier is in a great spot to go all the way to the regional finals against Houston. That's who I have coming out of that region. I think Xavier with Sean Miller at the helm, that's one of the most efficient offenses in the country. If they can D up just a little, and if they happen to get Fremantle back, he's been out for just about a month. If they get him along with Nunji to be a high-low double post, or as my old friend Al McGuire used to say, they got 2 aircraft carriers. They got 2 of them. Look out. They're a team that can give you a lot of trouble. I think Providence is you got to pick an 11-6 game. If you're looking for an upset in the bracket, Providence over Kentucky in the 11-6 game. Bryce Hopkins cannot wait to go up against the Big Blue. He was almost the player of the year in the league. Kolick got it, but Bryce had a lot of votes. Trust me. And Ed Croswell, he's got another bully in the paint, and Clifton Moore coming off the bench, another near 7-footer that they can fight off Sheboy and others with. I just think if their guards play well, if Noah Locke is knocking down threes, they don't shoot the ball from 3 very well. Noah Locke is their best 3-ball shooter. But Carter in the backcourt, along with so many others that they have from a defensive standpoint, if they can step it up and get some offense from Jared Bynum, who's their point guard, I think they're going to beat Kentucky. Just watch. The only team in the Big East that I thought got a bad draw was Connecticut. And probably Danny Hurley is on the hot seat more than any of them because of the fan base at UConn. I don't like their draw. They're going to more than likely wind up against Kansas in the Sweet 16, so I don't think they'll make a deep run. They may struggle with VCU, but they've got perhaps the best starting 5 and the most NBA players that you'll find on a roster within the Big East. So I think they'll hold up very, very well. Creighton's in a pretty good spot, too, to make the Sweet 16. I think they can beat Baylor if they happen to get that far in the into the second round. I foresee a Creighton win potentially over Baylor in the second round. So I have a lot of confidence, a lot of faith in the new Big East.
Yeah, I'm putting my money behind it whenever we're talking some of the spreads later. I'm looking at the conference and the head-to-head matchups just because of the tournament was so much fun to watch.
What do you think about the chance of Rick Pitino getting back in the conference, back in the Big East at St. John's?
Well, that's part of the problem for the draw with UConn. There's pressure here for Danny Hurley to beat Pitino, don't you think?
Yes.
And with the potential of Rick coming into the league as at St. John's, and I know Georgetown was another program that was linked to him a little bit as well. That other name that may be floating around a little bit in the Big East, keep an eye on it, is Bobby Hurley. Okay, after the play-in game that Arizona State must play, if he can make the noise, we'll see. But I think some teams, some programs, maybe multiple programs in the Big East are eyeing him at this stage. Let me give you one other first-round upset that I really like, and that is Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns.
Oh.
Bob Marlin is an outstanding coach, been around a long time. He may be almost my age, but he's done it at Sam Houston State. Now he's done it down in Lafayette, Louisiana. Tennessee's without one of their top players. I think it's affected them. I thought it was an issue for them last week in the SEC tournament. They still held on to a 4 seed. I think they may be a little overseeded, and Texas A&M may be a little underseeded out of that conference. So that's another upset that I foresee. And FAU is another team that in your bracket could be a potential bracket buster, and Charleston as well. San Diego State, many people think, could possibly be an upset team for Alabama to think about. I don't think so. I think Alabama could handle them, especially where the game would be played in Birmingham. Charleston, though, is a tough out. That's a really good team with 3 or 4 players that could play at any Power 6 school in college basketball. The reason I don't like Alabama is because I think Virginia is a problem. I think Virginia can expose Alabama's issues by playing that kind of disciplined game. If they just make shots, that's what Tony Bennett needs. But as I said, if Alabama happens to get past them, Arizona's got more artillery than Alabama offensively, in my opinion.
Ben Brando has been our guest here on OutKick 360. Hopefully we can do this a week from now. I'd love to get your thoughts on the Sweet 16 as we look ahead, Tim, and we really appreciate the visit today and the insight.
Well, dial me up. I'm always in this
Awesome.
time of year. As long as you can work around my tee times.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, no
We'll do
problem.
that.
No
Yeah.
problem.
As long as you tee it off in the
Okay.
morning, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, here in the afternoon.
It'll be in the
You got
70s by next week
Yeah.
is what we're expecting in the sport.
Thank you, Tim.
You bet, fellas. Anytime.
Tim Brando there, one of the best, has been our guest there from Fox Sports. Coming up, Chad, get weird. It's time to get weird with an attack. Chad said he was pissed off for greatness earlier. Got another example of that next on OutKick 360.
I was asked by the Sporting News to interview Bob Gibson at the All-Star game as a writer, so to speak, and about power pitching. And it came on the heels. I had struck out 300 back-to-back years or the year before, and so they wanted me to talk to him. So I had a chance to sit down with Mr. Gibson and interview him. And I think initially he was kind of, whatever. But I think once he realized that I was into it, I knew who Mr. Gibson was. I was born and raised in the game of baseball, and so I revered this man because of the respect my dad had for him. And the respect that Mr. Clemente had for Mr. Gibson, too. Clemente was my favorite player. And so I sat down and started talking to him. And I think once he realized, I started spitting out his stats and 1.12 ERA and this and that and 3-0 in the World Series, 3 complete games, I think once he realized that I had an immense amount of respect for him and I knew who he was, he kind of, I guess I'll use the term loosened up as much as Bob Gibson could loosen up. But we got to talking, and I brought up the subject about hitting batters. And, he was the guy. Everybody, when anybody talks about coming inside, they talk about Bob Gibson and Nolan Ryan. And so I said to him, and because I had a unique perspective, I played for Frank Robinson, who was one of the God's good people, one of my favorite people of all time. And Frank, I'll make this argument. I still believe he is the most underrated Hall of Famer in the history of the game. I think he is, when you talk about best players ever, he should be in the top 3, I think, 3 or 4. Anyway, I asked Bob Gibson about Frank Robinson because I think he hit Frank more than he hit almost anybody in his career. And he said, and he was almost offended. He's like, hell no, did I try and hit Frank Robinson? And I kind of was taken aback. And he said, you don't understand. Every single time I hit Frank Robinson, he homered off me in the next at bat. And I was like, oh, okay. The biggest fear, and I said it last week, I'm terrified as an organization if any of my pitchers are in this tournament. Obviously, you don't want, I think it's the Padres are talking about Juan Soto and him getting back and being ready to play in the tournament. I just don't want my pitchers in this game. You can't avoid the collision contact injuries. They usually generally are rare in baseball, but the pitching stuff worries me. But yeah, if I'm gambling, I got to tell you, I'm very comfortable with Japan at plus 275. Very comfortable. I would have those odds probably lower. I think that they're probably ahead of the USA. And I say that because I haven't seen USA play yet. Their lineup is unbelievable, but there's some questions, and I think your questions around their pitching are legitimate in the sense that the names aren't the same, right? I mean, this is not. I mean, you got Adam Wainwright, who's going to be going, pardon the expression, balls to the wall because he's 41 years old. This is one of the career highlights. I was on the team that went to Japan in 1998, and I ended up getting hurt after that. That was a max effort, every game meant the world kind of thing that I wasn't expecting or experiencing. And that was after a season of innings. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. I think Japan would be the guy. If I was putting money, if I was putting 100 today or 1,000 today, I'd put it on Japan.
The latest on John Morant and Aaron Rodgers' watch in New York. That's coming up on OutKick 360 here on the OutKick Network. Chad, Davey Hudson, across from us here in studio, debuting a new segment. Let's get weird. And I do know the subject matter. I don't know the full story. Chad doesn't even know the subject matter, but it involves an animal.
I know nothing.
I think Chad embodies this animal today. As we started the show, he said he was pissed off for greatness. Davey, let's hear it.
Thank you, Hutton. Colin, hit the music.
Let's get weird.
All right.
Let's get weird.
Diving into this, we're going to get weird.
All right, okay. We got music. I like that.
We're going out to Ohio. Some people call it America's trash can, the new Florida. I don't want to go that far, but we have a zebra that apparently has attacked a man. Shout out. I want to make sure I get his name right. Should already know this. I think it's Ronald. Shout out Ron.
Big Ron.
Clifton.
Ronnie.
72
Big
from
Ronnie Clifton.
Pickaway County, Ohio. Now, where this gets really weird is he owns some zebras. Well, apparently, one of his zebras, the male, attacked him, almost ripped his arm right off.
So, the zebra ripped up. Okay.
Yes.
He owns multiple zebras or just one zebra?
We're looking at about 7 zebras.
Okay.
And the next thing you know, he calls 911 because obviously he's had his arm mauled by a zebra.
Sure.
So something you're probably not expecting if you're a dispatcher in rural Ohio. So then he calls and the dispatcher's like, wait, did you just say you had your arm ripped off by a zebra? He goes, hell yeah, I did. So then the next thing we know is cops show up. They got a picture of him just laying on the ground. We got body footage. Tyler, you got that one in there? Just make sure we get. There he is. He's just laying there.
Look at this guy.
Yeah, he's not doing well.
Looks like a body farm out there in Ohio.
Then, as the paramedics, everybody's trying to help him, the male zebra keeps trying to charge them. So they drive a truck in between. They're setting the sirens off, trying to scare the zebra away. This thing keeps trying to attack. Eventually, we got the family in the background yelling, if you turn your back, he will attack. So the next thing is he ends up having to be like, if you got to shoot it, just shoot it. So the thing keeps charging at him, and then a female cop just grabs a 12 gauge and just shoots the zebra dead right there.
That would have been the decision initially for me here. So he's the male is protecting the 6 other females, right?
Do we know
correct.
Is this a wildlife reserve? You know, you have those things like the drive up, you petting zoo. You know, the animals will come to and you park, or is this just like a black market? This guy just owns zebras to eventually.
There are wild zebras in the United States that roam because of zoos and just zebras getting out.
This is like a 73-acre farm, but it reminded me of the Zanesville massacre. I don't know if you guys remember that one from about 10 years ago. Obviously, a tragic situation. I mean, most massacres, typically, that's what happened. But, yeah, you know, that guy ended up killing himself and had, I don't know, like 50 animals escape, and they had to kill them all.
You successfully found an entertaining story that I've heard nothing about until right now. So I would say job well done on the first edition of Let's Get Weird. Excellent work.
There are nearly 200 zebras that roam California.
But they've escaped from somewhere. We don't have zebras in the U.S. They were in captivity at some point.
We do. Just one less after this story. Headlines next, including John Morant.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the final hour is here on this Tuesday edition, OutKick 360. Glad you're with us across the OutKick network. Hutton and Withrow here. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Darren Waller, the big news today, the trade earlier, the Raiders sending their Pro Bowl and All-Pro tight end to New York with the Giants. They make the trade. They give up a third-round pick, which they got in exchange in a trade that was made with the Kansas City Chiefs at the deadline. And Chad, Waller has around $12 million on his contract this year. The Raiders didn't want to pay that based on what they're doing with a roster restructure. And in reading up on his contract details, right now, only this season is guaranteed remaining on the deal that he recently signed with the Raiders. So the Giants make a move, and they get a 1,000-yard tight end receiver to pair with Daniel Jones and a run game of Saquon Barkley. It's great for a team that needs more playmakers around the quarterback that they just signed to a 4-year extension.
On a day that's been all about the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, the Giants are the only ones to make legitimate news so far with this trade.
The Jets have signed
Alan Lazard, but I'll take Darren Waller as bigger news
and the
over
Jets
Alan Lazard.
Are going to take Aaron Rodgers, it's presumed, based on the moves that they're making. Because
every NFL newsbreaker's on their phone right now, on camera somewhere.
They're all on,
hoping that
6
happens.
of them.
Yeah,
6 phones, 3 for Schefter and
Don't
2
you
for
think
everyone
multiple
else.
phones would make you less productive? I thought about that with Schefter.
I don't
If you're
know.
having to divert your eyes to like 3 phones the way he has them, I feel like that'd make it harder to respond to everyone as opposed to just going back to your text messages on your one phone.
Well, I want to know how he separates
It seems
them.
counterproductive to me.
You know, Armando's got two, a work and a personal. I want to know how Schefter separates and differentiates between like 3 and 4. You know, like who you give a certain number to.
Yeah,
how
like
you
is
would go about doing
one
that.
for GMs, one for agents.
Maybe, but
one for
but
someone
then
else.
If that guy shares the number with someone else, that he's already got Schefter's number, does he, you know, does it screw up his algorithm?
What if you had him labeled and he picked one up on camera and it said like owners on the back of it, the little labeling system like you put in your kitchen? You know, he's got that on the phone,
would say
so he
he's
knows
probably
which one
got
is which.
Labeled in his phone is the wrong name, though, knowing Schefter.
Yeah.
If he's picking it up on screen. Other free agency news notes, Lazard is signing with the New York Jets. That will be official tomorrow. They also have called to inquire about Randall Cobb joining the team. Mercedes Lewis, that's another player that Rodgers wants a part of that roster. And Odell Beckham Jr., who's being mentioned now with New York, but of course with Dallas. And the Buffalo Bills yesterday freed up over $30 million in cap space by restructuring Josh Allen and Von Miller. Now, they've got some room to work. It'll be interesting to see what they do. But it was Von Miller that was saying that Odell Beckham Jr. was coming to Buffalo late last year. That didn't happen. Medically, I'm not sure he could have passed a physical at the start of the playoffs, but by next season he absolutely will. And I wonder if Buffalo's also getting in the mix there. But if he wants to play with Aaron Rodgers, New York's the destination because Green Bay's moving on to Jordan Love.
Doesn't it feel like Buffalo's on the way down?
Well, they've got some cap
They're
issues.
still going to be good, but I feel like
it's a quarterback league, though.
Buying or selling, the Jet situation possibly with Aaron Rodgers feels like something on the way up. I feel like Buffalo has plateaued at this point. Not that they're going to be bad this year.
They need to establish a full run game. If I'm Buffalo, I'm calling the Tennessee Titans about Derrick Henry.
Yeah, that would be something.
You just freed up $30 million. I wouldn't go after Odell. I'd go after Henry and see if you can get the very last of Henry in his prime for a team that is primed for a playoff run. And we saw what happened in the elements. The cold weather in the postseason, it benefited Cincinnati more.
Yeah, imagine having Derrick Henry in bad weather in January in the playoffs in Buffalo.
And there's a reason, so people are talking about the moves Miami's made. Miami still has Tua. And they have Mike White as the backup now to Tua. And Tua is very good when healthy. I just don't buy that he's going to stay healthy. So it's hard for me to say I view the Dolphins the same way I do the Jets with Rodgers and that offense.
Yeah.
Personally. Hit us up with your thoughts at OutKick 360. Ja Morant making a good decision, believe it or not. Reports are that he's entered counseling. Return to the NBA still in question. But Chad, I mean, I'm not exaggerating here when I say you and I agree. His career was in question based on the trajectory of decisions made and what we've seen come out with guns involved and what the league has or has not done behind the scenes, because we really don't know disciplinary action other than this, where they still don't say it's a suspension. He's getting help with the troubling actions that we've seen off the court from Ja Morant. This is what it was needed. And here's hoping that it goes in all the right ways for him because of the talent he has on the court. And I'm hoping he's not rushed back or feels rushed back to rejoin the Grizzlies anytime soon if he, in fact, feels he needs to stay. He's got to get it on he's got to straighten the path. It doesn't always have to be it's not unusual to have a bumpy road throughout your life. But the spree that we've seen, both from family members, people he's running with, and from him, the chain of stories, the photos from the strip club in Denver, the laser pointer with the Indiana Pacers, all of that individually, okay. But together over the course of a couple of months, craziness. And thankfully, and maybe it took this to not call it a suspension for him to do this. But here's hoping that he gets the help that he needs.
I think it's probably, if not league mandated, league suggested counseling in this situation with Ja Morant now, with not just the incident in the Denver strip club, but everything else that's gone on with the laser pointer, everything we mentioned, the fight in his home with the teenage boy that was playing basketball with him, the
Yeah.
finish line, showing up with security guard there, and
the manager.
all the stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the Grizzlies' remaining schedule right now. They're currently first in their division. They have 15 games left.
Okay.
I don't think he's coming back until April. That means he will miss 10 more games, and he would play the final 5 games of the regular season and gear up for the playoffs. I'm looking at this through the league's eyes. I think that would be ideal for them because now the league can sell redemption tour for Ja Morant. He's going to go to counseling. He's going to try to get his life in order. He's going to get healthier, and he could come back and have a 5-game tune-up back with the Grizz and get ready for their playoff series.
Okay.
Again, I'm looking at this as Adam Silver's probably looking at it. Now, I'm not Adam Silver. I would have called it a suspension with Ja Morant. He's not because, as Andrew Bogut told us on yesterday's show, this is a player-led league, and players get everything they want in the NBA, and things are worded the way that they want. So this is Ja Morant stepping away to get healthy. I'm fine with all of that, not fine with the league not saying he's suspended while he does that. But if I had to guess, I think he's probably going to come back in early April, close out the regular season, and then whoever the Grizzlies end up with in the playoffs, that's where he'll get going.
Premier brand is Ja Morant for the NBA. But keep this in mind. If they're looking at his return, what they're currently looking at as a league is the footage from the club in Denver. They haven't ruled on that.
Yeah.
That just came out, which is a violation of NBA policy. And presumably this came to light while he was on his way to counseling already. So if you're Adam Silver, you also need to follow the policy set forth that every player adheres by.
So here's
which
what
is
I would...
the gun on weapon on NBA business.
I mean, he had a weapon on NBA business. I guess I hate that my mind is trained this way, but we're coming off the Alabama story where they did everything to apologize for and forgive Brandon Miller to not suspend him. So my mind is now trained to, well, what would the defense of Ja Morant and the Grizzlies and the NBA be? The defense to me is pretty easy. A member of his crew brought a gun. They didn't fly with the team. They brought it to Denver, and he was basically, show playing that he had the gun on him in the club, but it was for photos and videos and wasn't his gun, and he didn't have it with him in the team hotel. He was just holding someone else's gun. And I don't know what footage in the strip club could show that that's not the case other than he just walked in with it. But then they defend, well, it was still the other guy's gun. He just happened to have it on him.
I'm not even sure that matters.
My
they
point
could make
being
it
here,
matter,
Hutton,
but...
if you wanted to discipline him in any way, you would have every bit of evidence to discipline him. But at this point, if you're the NBA and you want to just wash your hands of it, absolve Ja Morant, say that he's off getting healthy right now, and not discipline him in any way, you could come up with a million excuses as to why he shouldn't be disciplined, and a million excuses for him in the club with the gun. And I think that's the way they're going to lean.
Well, it's not about if it's his gun or not. The policy prohibits carrying a firearm on team business or at a team facility. It's not owning or presenting or whose gun it is. If he's carrying it, he's carrying it.
Well, that's league.
This is not the first time that he's involved with something like this.
That's league policy, right?
Yes.
It's university policy at Alabama that you get kicked out of school or suspended if you have a gun anywhere around school property.
No, on school property, not around school property. It's on campus.
They worked their way around that.
But that is the policy, on campus.
Right. But the gun was on campus at some point.
Yeah, but it may not be with Brandon Miller because that's not his weapon.
If Denver's not going to file charges, which I don't understand.
Well, I don't understand that either.
Because I don't think there's any law that prohibits you having a weapon in a strip club where alcohol is sold and having it out like that. But especially in a state like Colorado that has very strict gun laws.
Right.
I don't understand that part of it. I think he should be dealt with by the league. And I think he should probably face criminal charges also. But my mind now is predispositioned because of the Alabama mess and because of the way the NBA has handled Ja Morant that they are going to jump through every hoop to see to it that this guy just gets counseling and that's it. It won't be called a suspension.
Than what Bama's done.
yes, it won't be called at least he's not playing. It won't be called a suspension. It won't be called any discipline. It's just a guy trying to go get healthy. That's what they want to phrase this as. Then he'll come back and ESPN and the league will promote the redemption tour of Ja Morant. New change Ja Morant, healthy in the playoffs. Watch him tonight, 8 p.m. Central Time on ESPN2.
Yeah. And that's how they'll push it if the NBA says that. They need to worry about the individual and not the story in this case. This is way more serious than just, looking the other way for ratings based on the trend. Because, again, it's not one incident.
Well, I think they don't need to worry about the story. They will. They don't need to worry about the story or the promotion. They also have to worry about their own image. This is not just about Ja Morant. I'm all for Ja Morant going and seeking treatment, doing whatever to make better choices, to not do dumb bleep all the time, and to make better decisions. But if you're the NBA, first and foremost, you got to think about the NBA. Just like the NFL protects the shield at all cost, this makes the NBA look bad. And being soft on this stuff makes them look bad. Andrew Bogut said it, and hearing him talk about it, I buy what he's saying. David Stern protected that Jerry West NBA logo at all cost. He was a businessman, but he could be firm with players, and he would discipline if it, in fact, caused harm to the league. I think Adam Silver is so big on players league, players run it, the players are happy, the league is good, that he's not that type of commissioner that's going to look out first and foremost for the league. And that's what you need a little bit of also. Both need to be protected ahead of the story or the promotion of the playoffs.
Oh, and if they, in this investigation, just reading it, Mark Stein here, if they confirm that that's his weapon, it's an automatic 50-game suspension. Because if he took it on the road, it's prohibited on any team premise, which would be the plane beyond that. Like it extends beyond the team facility.
I may be dead wrong here, but that will not happen. I am shocked. I would be shocked.
But
if they actually prove that it was his gun. I think they'll make every excuse that it was someone else's gun that was on him.
You can make that excuse if we have not seen the string of incidents we've seen, though. And here's the thing. They can be soft on many issues. When it comes to this, I think they're smart enough. They should be smart enough to realize if he's back, it's happening again. And based on the 4 games that we're aware of that he's missing, he's the timetable here on the calendar would be Friday's game against Dallas, I believe, is when he could come back with Memphis. So we'll know sooner rather than later.
It's a pretty quick treatment plan
in
this facility in Florida.
Yeah, it's a 4-game deal, though, is where we are on the timetable. We don't know if it's been extended yet. Maybe they'll just extend it.
I think that will be extended. I'll be surprised if they find cause or they want to suspend him for 50 games. I'm with you. If it's his gun, he should be suspended for 50 games. But I just don't think the league wants to do that or will do that. So they'll find a way to work around it.
Chad, another big trade in the NFL. The Colts are trading Stephon Gilmore, their 5-time Pro Bowl corner, to the Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
For a 5th-round compensatory pick this season. So Indy unloads the salary of Gilmore, and Dallas picks up the corner after reports were, and you could look at some of the players in Dallas's locker room and the tweets they sent out. They wanted Jalen Ramsey. The players did. And they end up with Stephon Gilmore, another, again, 5-time Pro Bowler, headed to Dallas, traded by the Indianapolis Colts.
Still with him and Diggs. That's a good corner duo up in Dallas.
No doubt.
Ramsey would have been even better, but that's still pretty good.
Michael McKendry will join us coming up in a matter of minutes. We'll be talking about the upcoming Major League Baseball season and opening day, which will include all the teams with the first pitch, which is awesome. You can also get ready for the season by checking out the Kurt Schilling Baseball Show, which is available at OutKick.com every Tuesday and Friday. You'll have a new episode posted there. Kurt Schilling Baseball Show this week discussing rookie Corbin Carroll's $111 million contract, and Schilling's thoughts it's not a positive one for the league.
Arizona gives Corbin Carroll, 22-year-old Corbin Carroll, he of all 115 Major League plate appearances, a 8-year, $111 million deal. All guaranteed. Club has, I think, a 9th-year option for $23 million or something like that. But and Bill, we were talking earlier. This is the fusion, or this is where old school baseball and sabermetrics meet, and I think they butt heads. Because in my mind, this is sabermetricians saying, okay, all of his other numbers, all of his underlying numbers from college and the minor leagues tell us that he's going to be this $100 million player. So we're going to save some money and sign him. Whereas the old school guys would be like, hey, you know what? Give me a year or two of production, and then we'll take care of you. I just think that there's I mean, obviously as a player, who wouldn't love it? But as a team, no chance. No chance, given the physical nature of the game, given the challenge of the schedule, and the human factor. I mean, how is he going to handle a slump in the big leagues? How's he going to handle the 14-day East Coast road trips? I mean, there's just so many things. I believe I mean, this is one of those guys that almost, I feel like Chipper Jones or Alex Rodriguez, when you see him, you know, he's a can't miss. And I believe he is, but I don't believe to the tune of $111 million. So.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
OutKick 360 rolls on. Glad you're with us. Hutton and Withrow here. 6 in the Peabody, our location. Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine. Every Tuesday at this time, we're going to be joined by either Kurt Schilling or our next guest, our MLB insider. It's Michael McHenry, who joined us last year during the postseason. Did a great job. We begged him back, and he, fortunately for us, said yes.
We groveled. We said anything we can do, Michael, please just come back to us. Come back to us.
Please come back. Well, he's back.
He's back,
announcing it now. The fort is back with us. How you doing, brother?
I'm humbled. I mean, Kurt Schilling and you guys just kind of hanging from me right there. I feel very fortunate and blessed to be a part of this. Thanks, guys.
We've got our own baseball battery right now, right, with you two. We got the pitcher, we got the catcher. We've got everything covered baseball-wise here on the show, so we're excited.
You're right. You got to get him a pitch comp so we make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah. Michael, give us the overview of spring training and the outlook from the player's mindset, knowing you're on the roster, but what you're gearing up for, which is a grind.
Well, you would think after 2020, and we really haven't had a spring train that's normal since then, that they would just kind of let it be, let it go out and play. But no, let's just add 1,000 different rules, confuse everybody, do hand signals. I mean, the umpires literally look like they're landing a plane during the game. Saw it a couple of times today, and nobody really knows what's going on. But there's a problem with engaging with the fans, getting fans to engage back. Well, the reality of it is, I'm in the broadcast booth today watching the game, and there's things I don't understand that's going on because there's so much that's changing all at once. And what I mean by that is they are literally making up different rules as they go along. And I'll use Max Scherzer as an example. He comes set the other day because he gets a guy to call timeout. You get one timeout now in Major League Baseball. So you call that timeout, you step out. Max Scherzer came set while the guy was out of the box. So as soon as he stepped in, he threw it right down the middle, strike three. The guy had no chance catching up. So these guys are already the best in the world, making them better. But because of that moment, they switched the rule. So the pitcher has to wait till the batter's now engaged. It's just constantly and ever flowing. And they think it's going to be okay with the fans not understanding. I mean, the confusion is just off the charts.
I agree with you on especially that scenario with the confusion. I also understand time, and games are 24 minutes shorter. I mean, that's significant from spring training this year, from spring training to last year. That's a big jump. And I guess if the key is let's speed up the games, then mission accomplished so far with these rules changes.
Yeah, and to be honest, it does have a better pace, and I think that's the old school way anyways. If you go back and watch when even Kurt Schilling pitched, they wanted to have that quick tempo. If I was catching, if my guy wants that rhythm, that quick tempo, I'm going to give it to him. And honestly, that's always better for your defense and everybody else because it keeps them on their toes. I mean, you watch NFL, you watch different sports, the faster they go, you create confusion. A lot of different things can happen, and it plays to your benefit on really, in my opinion, both sides. But I don't even know why they're saying we have all these problems with time and blah, blah, blah. They're losing ad sales. The broadcast 15 seconds shorter every single time they go to commercial. So they're losing money too. So there's a bigger play at hand here. Not really sure what it is yet, but it really seems like they're trying to control every facet, from the time of the game to the way they make the balls, just a little bit of everything. And now they're getting in the regional networks. The MLB's got their little nabs in everything right now. It's wild.
Michael McHenry, our guest on OutKick 360, former Major League catcher and now broadcaster. What have you heard or learned about MLB taking over the regional networks and what they're trying to do, what the owners hope to accomplish?
Well, as you guys know, when you get into corporations that large, you only hear the hearsays.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to do everything they can to get everything out there the best they can. But the reality of it is, cable isn't the way it used to be. It's too expensive. The rights deal are just crazy expensive. The rumor has it that the Pirates and AT&T have a $60 million deal. That's a lot of money. And you look at our payroll, last I looked, I believe we're just at $48 million. So, that's $12 million that, hey, why aren't we spending it on guys to bring in better talent or whatever? That's what the fans are constantly saying to me. Obviously, I'm not the owner. He's doing well. He's a businessman, and they have a really, really good team looking forward. But they got to figure out some things to be more transparent, more open with all of this if they really want that type of engagement they're looking for, especially with these younger fans. And they got to stop these blackouts. I mean,
yes.
I think NBA and NFL have shown if you can brand the players and show these guys a little bit of everywhere, good things will happen.
So Apple TV partners with MLS, and now every game in MLS, every match you can find on Apple TV. That's big news. That's not huge news. If an Apple TV partnered with Major League Baseball and offered every game in Major League Baseball, and you could go and subscribe individually to your favorite team and watch all 162 if you wanted, that is a huge sports media story. When we talk about the monopolization of Major League Baseball with everything, could that include an enormous company like an Apple that they partner with, and they partner with everything distribution rights wise?
I'd love that. I think they need to start looking at it instead of trying to hit a home run, hit a bunch of singles. And I used the example the other day with someone in the front office. I said, think if they thought about 1 million pennies instead of $1 million, right? It's the same amount of money. But the reality of it is, if you open up this network, it may be 10 million pennies instead of $1 million. The old way of thinking and the way that the world's going, it's so fast. So you have to do a lot of different things. And the biggest thing, you can't do without the players. So you got to brand these guys out. The fact that they're finally calling Mike Trout Captain America for Team USA, I mean, I want to buy the man a shield and let him run around town in the suit all the time, because that's what baseball needs. They need the branding. They need the marketing. They need the fun. Watch the World Baseball Classic. You know exactly what I mean. Doesn't matter if you go to Japan or Taipei. It doesn't matter. You're going to see people in the dugout dancing, see bullhorns. You're going to see people dressed up in weird costumes. It's a festival, and a game breaks out.
Mike, so you mentioned the World Baseball Classic. I know you're a fan of the way Fox has been promoting it.
So good.
I'm curious here, because in the NFL, they'll go through 100 players before they actually have a Pro Bowl roster, right? Do you think we get to a point where the players are gearing up for the season and they don't participate in this, or is this more or less the objective for you mentioned Trout and others? Are we going to constantly see the top players participating as much as possible?
Well, the fact that 16 of the top American pitchers aren't on the USA team is sad. I think there's no greater honor than being able to wear the red, white, and blue, and I think they should push as hard as they can to get the best players to play, to get out on that world stage. So that was a shame, but yeah, I think this is one of the best offensive teams and most athletic USA teams I could think of in recent memories. I mean, the fact that Mike Trout's diving around, stealing bases, and doing some stuff, Nolan Arenado's just reaching, lunging out for a single. I mean, I think that means a lot, because you're playing for something way bigger than yourself. And it's really that little kid that gets to come back out. It's not about money. It's not about anything else. Just going out there and just representing the right way in the red, white, and blue. So I hope as we move forward, because baseball in America is slowly getting overtaken. You look how good Japan is. You look how good Venezuela, Puerto Rico, and let's talk about the powerhouse in Dominican Republic. It's going to be hard to continue to compete with these teams moving forward.
How good is that ultimately, though, for Major League Baseball, that so many of these countries you mentioned are so good at baseball, and we're seeing that now on the world stage?
I hope one day it really is a World Series. I hope we have that capability to travel that fast, the recovery works, and we can actually play a genuine World Series, like Japan versus America. Let's go. I think that'd be absolutely outstanding. I think that's where they want it to go, but you got to open it up. If you talk about Ohtani, I swear every iPhone in Japan lights up.
Yeah.
They're such big fans. We got to get that same feel here. There's got to be a LeBron James of baseball, Tiger Woods of baseball. Just don't see that. I mean, when's the last time you heard of a billionaire baseball player by endorsements and everything else? Never.
Right.
That'd be awesome. And they have exposure 162 times plus spring training. So why would you want to sponsor them? Why would you want to go after them? It's because the branding isn't well.
The Dodgers paid Trevor Bauer $22.5 million to not be a part of their roster. And you mentioned Japan. He's signed a 1-year contract in Japan to pitch. What do you make of that move? Because he still gets that full amount from LA. And is this Bauer saying, I want to continue in the MLB. I'm going to give you a reason to sign me? Because if he doesn't do it, chances are he's not making his way back in. Is that how I should view this?
Well, it's a great business move because he's making $4 million, and if he stayed in the States, he'd be making league minimum, which I believe is around $755, just increased over the last bargaining agreement. But The reality is the man was not convicted. And I'm a believer. I live my life by faith, and I have fallen. I have messed up. I've done a lot of things wrong in my life, but I've been saved by grace. And I believe in that grace until you're proved wrong. For 2 years now, this man's been out of baseball. I get the largest punishment ever put down, and he was not convicted. He was given that by an arbiter hired by Major League Baseball that didn't get challenged. And the fact that he's not in the game and he's one of the game's premier players is just a shame. I mean, I think what he's done for baseball up to this point, whatever he does off the field, I'm not a judge, I'm not a jury, I have nothing to do with it, but just saying he has a female agent, first ever in the Major League Baseball, and he set an unprecedented record when he signed with the Dodgers. And he's just a guy that's on the forefront of all the technology, all the development, and he wants to put it out there. If you go look at his YouTube channel, not promoting him, I don't know him that well, but I do know that the man is great for the game. He challenges the game, and he's pushing forward with the game. But the fact he's going to go over to Japan, Japan's going to love him. And I hope he gets back here. I really do.
And I agree with you. I'm surprised that he's not, eligible to play, or the whole thing really baffles me with Trevor Bauer.
Me too.
Is there something else that's going on about him as a teammate? Is he not liked around the league? This feels like he's being blackballed for more than one reason from the league and from everyone else.
He's that guy that's always been smarter than most people, especially when he walks in a room. He's got that engineer mind. And I mean, he's developed technology on his own, development stuff that has been able to kind of get on the forefront of what was going on way before anybody even knew what was happening. So I think when he walks in a room, he's just a different bird. He had some really bad hiccups early on in his career about pushing back because he had his way. He didn't want to change it. So he got deemed, but he kind of broke through that barrier. He teamed up with Driveline, did some really cool things. He put himself out there. And for probably over a decade, you didn't hear anything other than like the guy just gets after it. And you want to just sit there and soak in the knowledge he's going to pour into you. So outside off the field issues and different things like that, I've heard that he is who he is. He shows up every single day and does his work. He may not be the nicest human in the world, but you know what you're going to get out of him every day. And I think that's something to be said because, everybody has different personalities. Some guys are just absolute jerks, but if he's a jerk every day and I can expect that, I'm okay with it.
And I subscribe to his YouTube channel as well. From 2019, he takes he's got a camera with him everywhere. Major League Baseball doesn't like him. I mean, they fine him all the time. He tells the audience that I'm sure he still does it. Hey, what I'm doing right now is going to get a fine. And then, the next episode, he shows you what shows up at his locker. And, he's wearing things on the mound to mock the Astros during the cheating scandal, many things like that. There are teammates too who look the other way when a camera's in the locker room, in the clubhouse, and I think that also could play a role in that. But he's also well liked by some of his teammates who come over to the house and join him on that podcast he does. So I think there's more to it for sure. Do you think he's back in the league though, at some point?
Yeah, I don't know how you don't. If he goes over there, proves himself. I mean, you were just talking about has he been doing it lately? He hasn't. I mean, he's kept his mouth shut. He hasn't been talking out. I mean, he's a guy that he's going to tell you how it is. But he's also a guy that will take it back. And I appreciate that. I don't care what side of any spectrum you're on. If just because I believe in Jesus and you believe in Satan, that's cool. We can be great friends. Let's have a good conversation. It doesn't matter. But I think you should at least have the conversation, give him a chance. And if he goes over there, different language, different place, does well, and they fall in love with him, man, everybody will be calling. Everybody will be calling.
Right now,
if they're not, there really is something going on.
I am looking at the odds for the winner of the 2023 Major League Baseball World Series. Okay, I'm looking at this right now. OutKick.com/bet is where you can go for this. Here are your favorites in order: Astros, Yankees, Mets, Dodgers, Braves, Padres. Right now, across Major League Baseball, does every player in baseball agree that one of those teams is winning the trophy? Or do they actually buy into the fact they have a shot?
I think they buy in. And, if I had to take a pick, I'll put it out there now. It's Atlanta.
Okay.
Just the way that they have constructed their team. You bet on guys. You're taking chances on guys. Charlie Morton signing back. I thought 100% knowing him, it was about family time, playing the guitar. He was out, but no, right back. That says a lot. But they have one of the best coaching staffs, one of the best cultures you could really ask for, and they're treating their guys the right way. There's a special thing when you feel wanted, good things are going to happen. That's what I hope for every single player, that they feel like they're wanted. And I'll never forget Daniel Bard said that is why he signed in Colorado, because everybody thought he was nuts. Coming off the yips, you're going to go to maybe the worst pitching park on the planet. And he said, man, I didn't even think about it. I just felt wanted. And that's what made me want to go there. That's a big thing when you get up, to the major leagues. You're on this mountaintop, and I don't care if you're a Hall of Famer and Kurt Schilling, and yes, Hall of Famer and Kurt Schilling, or myself, who was a backup catcher for, half a decade. The reality of it is you just look at it and say, man, if you feel wanted, you start playing better. You start doing things better. And then that kind of engulfs you in that culture. So I think Atlanta's the special pick, and I'd be very interested to see how the Mets turn out, because it's going to be a battle in that division all year.
The Cubs made Dansby Swanson feel wanted. That's for sure. How big of an addition is Dansby Swanson to that team, and what kind of loss is that for the Braves?
I think it's going to be way bigger than they can even imagine. Honestly, I can't believe, first Freddie, and that worked out okay, right? Good for them. But Dansby too. I think you can only let go of certain character type guys like those two so many times before that karma comes around and bites you. Because I've never heard a bad thing about him. I got to meet him when I was rehabbing in Nashville. He came right up to me, had no clue who I was, shook my hand, very cordial, and carried on a quality conversation. He doesn't remember that. And that's the reality. The guy shows up and does his job, but he also gets back out right there and gets in with the fans and makes sure that he's given back to the game that's given him so much. And I'm excited because the shift band and things are going to make guys like him take it to the next level, because you have to know the game better than you've ever had to know it over the last probably 5 to 10 years, because nobody's telling you where to play. You got to read the swing. You got to understand what the pitcher's going to throw, maybe how the field plays. There's a lot of different elements that guys with makeup like him, they're going to stand out a little bit more.
Final 60 seconds here. What's the rule change that players right now, you hear them complaining about the most?
The Rain Man numbers of the pitch clock. Are you kidding me? 230, 215, 30, 15. It's just, make it universal, make it simple, right? We're not math majors here. We're just guys that hit baseballs, play baseball, and we play a little kids game for a living. So simplify that. That's the one thing. And the one thing, guys, I'll tell you right now, it's too much on the home plate umpire. I don't care. It's just too much. They shouldn't have that much power. You mark my word, there's going to be at least one game that matters, that's going to come back maybe near the wild card, that a team lost because of an infraction, and they're not in the playoffs. Just wait. They've been saying it, we're going to be absolutely cutthroat with this, no exceptions. If that's the case, you're going to see something like you did with the Braves in spring training in Boston, where the game just ended. What just happened? He wasn't ready to hit at 8 seconds.
8 seconds is a weird time.
That's
one
bizarre.
that's a strange. Could round it up to 10, right? Make it a little easier
Right.
than 8.
Let's go even numbers, right?
Yeah.
Michael McHenry has been our guest, back with us throughout the season every other week. It's either Kurt Schilling or Michael McHenry with us on Tuesdays at this time. Great to have you back, man. Wrap up spring training, and we can't wait to get through opening day. All the teams playing at the same day. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, man. Sounds
Thanks,
great.
Fort. Appreciate it.
Yeah. At the Fort McHenry on social is where you can find him there.
8 Seconds was a good Luke Perry movie back in the day. We have an Aaron Rodgers announcement.
Well, don't. We're not ESPN here. I'm not teasing the audience.
I was gonna say, it's not on what he's doing, but there is an announcement about Aaron Rodgers.
We may be finality. Finally,
we may have an announcement about an announcement. That is how we call.
It's LeBron James.
That's what we call in the business a tease.
It is LeBron James-esque.
Yes.
Next on OutKick 360.
Does it feel like we're every single year? It feels like we start things off earlier than the year before. It blew my mind. I was scrolling through social media last week or the week before last, and you got Vanderbilt rolling, you got Florida going, Kentucky's now going, but then you got some schools that are holding off, till the middle of March, to start spring practice. Before you know it, Mike, like the national championship's going to end, and 2 weeks later they're going to start spring practice. It's getting crazy, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I thought coaches had a little bit more control over when these things started, but I guess not always the case. And I'll give you an example, Trey. I heard Hugh Freeze was kind of upset that they started so early. They started last week, and not that he didn't want to go to camp, but he has just been on the ground running since day one. He's not had time to get away. He wanted a little bit of a break, but hey, that's life in the SEC. You got to do it when you got to do it. And another little anecdote. One of my buddies covers the Florida Gators, so he took off the week prior to spring practice. He thought it was the perfect time just to recharge for fall camp. And what do you know? 3 coaches exit for the NFL. I mean, that was the worst time to take a vacation, but that's life in the SEC.
And it looks like Florida's shoring up the tight end spot, position. And we get to this point where, some guys are on breaks right now. Some coaches are. They take this final week. They want to dip off. They're going to spend time with the family because, from next week until July, they don't get a break. And I'm interested. That's one thing I wanted to ask you about when it comes to college football and where we are at right now. I had this conversation. I was talking with former Tennessee assistant T. Martin, talking with a couple other assistant coaches about this with the recruiting calendar. How much change, in your opinion, have we seen? Because I have my thoughts, but I want your thoughts on how much change we've seen when it comes to the recruiting calendar when you add in the transfer portal and you're adding NIL to the conversation. Like, Mike, these jobs for these coaches have changed in the last 2 years. It's been more added to it. And yeah, they make money. They make good money in the Power 5 level, but job titles aren't the same anymore, brother.
No, and you're seeing it more and more. I mean, the NFL has always been an intriguing option for a lot of these coaches, but, it was pretty stunning when a guy like Steve Spurrier made that jump to the NFL. Now, it seems like all these coaches, the first chance they get, it don't matter where it is or what the position is. Hey, I'm going to the NFL because I don't want to have to deal with all this other BS. Like you said, the recruiting, the NIL, the transfer portal, and not only having to deal with all that, but having to deal with all of that essentially in the same period. I mean, it's just incredibly wild. I think they really screwed up with this early high school signing period. It doesn't make any sense now. And now that we got the expanded college football playoff coming right around the corner, I mean, we are going to have what is essentially now the signing day, the national signing day, the week of the college football playoff. So how locked in can Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, and them be for recruiting when they will likely have a game in about 3 days to prepare for that is going to determine how successful their season is? I mean, something has to be done. It's hard for me to feel too bad, Trey, for some of these guys making $10, $11 million, but they're at the high bar. I mean, most of the assistants are doing all the work and they're not getting paid near as much. So yeah, I mean, we're just going to keep losing more and more quality coaches to do other things because we're just putting too much on these guys.
OutKick 360 rolls on. Glad you're with us. Tuesday edition. Hutton and Withrow with you. Chad, you teased the Aaron Rodgers announcement about an announcement. We have heard from someone very close to Rodgers on a weekly basis, and he will be joining a show tomorrow.
Pat McAfee tweeted out about 8 minutes ago. Be a friend, tell a friend. You are cordially invited tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern to join the show live with Aaron Rodgers as a guest. So we believe Aaron Rodgers will announce tomorrow. I think the news will break before then.
Okay, so
and then he'll just talk about it on the show. But that would just be my guess.
Yeah, so
I've been skeptical throughout that Aaron Rodgers will be the one that breaks this story. It will be one of the NFL newsmakers.
Unless he hasn't told anybody what he's doing. And the newsbreakers and newsmakers have been reporting the Jets and the Packers haven't heard from the guy. So if you buy that, then he may truly only announce it one time and one time only. That's what I'm curious about is how he handles it, because tomorrow's the day if he's joining McAfee and McAfee's announcing that normally it's a Tuesday when he joins. And he said earlier this morning that he wouldn't have any knowledge on Rodgers. He couldn't confirm anything and wasn't going to happen today on his show. But yeah, he's going to appear tomorrow, and the presumption is the announcement's coming tomorrow. So do you think you don't think the news ends by someone else this evening or early tomorrow morning?
I do. I don't think – I'd be surprised if Aaron Rodgers is the one that breaks this news of a trade to the Jets.
Well,
I think someone, Jets or Packers, will break that news.
Okay.
Right?
I guess. I mean, this guy's – he's weird. Like, he's the one guy in the league that could keep this to himself
he could also
and not
just
talk to anybody.
say,
He doesn't talk to his family. So I buy the idea that he hasn't called the Packers or the Jets.
If he hasn't talked to either side, he could go on Pat McAfee and just say, I've decided I'm not done, and I'm going to keep playing. So whatever happens, happens now. We'll let other people make those decisions, right? I mean, he could just say, I'm going to play, and then boom, the wheels are in motion to trade him.
But we know what has happened with Green Bay. They're going to trade him if he wants to continue to play. And there's one team that's in the mix, and that's it, according to Ian Rappaport, and it's the New York Jets. And that's it.
But my point is, this would prevent him from announcing that he's been traded to the Jets. He just says, I've decided to play, and now, whatever needs to happen will happen.
But by saying that,
he's going to the Jets.
It's the Jets.
Yeah.
But the Jets may not know that by tomorrow.
If he truly hasn't talked to anyone, then there's no official trade until he announces he's definitely playing.
Right.
So what I'm saying is he could kind of not protect himself, but just say, I've decided I'm going to play, and I'm sure you've all read the news, so some things might be happening about me playing and where I'm going to play next year, but nothing's final. And then that's when they have to officially make the move. Now, Adam Schefter said this morning, I don't know if he's changed his tune, but he said all this talk about a trade being finalized, that's not true. He said they have not completely agreed upon terms of what it would do. And part of the wrangling is Aaron Rodgers reworking his contract situation and his money for the Jets, and that's not done either.
I wonder if it could include Corey Davis.
I think Corey Davis was cut.
Was it official?
I think a little bit earlier, I feel like I saw that he was officially cut.
Okay, I haven't seen that pop through. But that is a.
Well, I'm so blinded just waiting on Rodgers.
That's a move
news
they
that
need to make.
I feel like I saw that.
That's a move they would have needed to make. It's presumed he will.
Yeah,
be.
he was cut.
Okay, so they made room by cutting Davis to sign Lazard. Randall Cobb's another one that Rodgers wants to continue to play with. He wants Mercedes Lewis there. Odell Beckham Jr. is another one that they may be making room for. Again, Rodgers is going to ask for everything, and he's got to find out within, there is a timetable here if he's going to play or not, and presumably he does it tomorrow with McAfee, and we'll have reaction to it with a number of people on the show tomorrow with thoughts and analysis of the trade. And, I mean, this is, if the Jets get him, it's great. If they don't, if he decides, hey, I'm not into it anymore, I'm off to my next retreat, I don't know what the Jets end up doing. Matt Ryan is going to be available. Matt Ryan's being released by the Indianapolis Colts.
He got cut.
Jacoby Brissett.
Trade for Ryan Tannehill?
They could. Jacoby Brissett's also available and played okay for Cleveland as the starter prior to Deshaun Watson. But again, this is the veteran boom or the veteran bust for the New York Jets. But based on today's signing,
he's going to be a Jet.
Yeah. He loves Nathaniel Hackett.
He loves Jersey, I hear too.
Hackett was one of the 4 that went and met with him in California.
I've heard through the grapevine that Jersey is his 17th favorite state. So that's also a big part of this decision for Rodgers. Top 20. Top 20 of the 50.
Matters.
That does
Back
matter.
at it tomorrow, 3 o'clock
Every
Eastern
little
for
thing
OutKick
matters.
360 across the OutKick network.
And so I thank all of you. And I am because you are.